It is now 3 o'clock. Those commissioners that are in the building, if you'll sit down so I can see if I have a quorum so we can start.
Amen.
Busy agenda today.
Hey, I'm so sorry about it. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that jumps in real quick.
Remember, how close are we?
That was me honking at you and Beth on Saturday.
One person?
Walking down Timberlane School Road.
One city?
We were saying, who has the minivan? And I said,
That was me.
I said Daly, but I wasn't sure it was you.
That was me.
Good? All right, we're good? You sure? Thank everybody for coming today. We have a packed agenda. We'll start agenda modifications. If I could, by request, I would like to move item number 10 ahead of 9 if there's no objection. Seeing no objection, we'll take 10 before 9. We'll move on to the CAC Chairman report.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to see so many people show up to hear me give the CAC advisory report. Thank you very much.
It's all you, Neil.
The CAC met and approved the concept plan for segment 3D of the Capital Cascades Trail. We had some good, robust conversation about that. There was some discussion of some aspects of FAMU Way, including concerns about pedestrians maybe taking a shortcut across FAMU Way and potentially crossing at places other than the roundabout. Some folks are really concerned about pedestrian safety, and several members inquired about maybe the possibility of a mid-block crossing there just to alleviate the possible contentious interaction of pedestrians and traffic there. There was also some good conversation about the importance of ensuring ADA accessibility in the design of this particular segment of the Cascades Trail. Mr. Harding, our ADA representative, provided just fantastic input about different enhancements that could be made to enhance ADA accessibility, both in the design of that segment and in other segments of the Cascades Trail as well. There was also some good support for different elements celebrating the history of nearby neighborhoods associated with that segment of the trail, and lots of interest in acknowledging the importance of those neighborhoods. A second issue that was discussed was the general consensus of support for the concept of an Orange Avenue, Lake Bradford Road, and Spring Hill Road corridor study. There were some concerns expressed about the potential for congestion, where the proposed 4-laning of Orange Avenue narrows down to a 2-lane segment on Orange Avenue just east of Lake Bradford Road, and just questions about how that might be resolved moving forward. A third item of interest from the December meeting, an earlier meeting, was interest by the CAC in creating some sort of an easy-to-read document for the Blueprint website that would make it a little easier for the public to follow progress on Blueprint projects. Maybe something similar to the 2015 performance report that was provided. A few members of the public that different committee members have talked about have really expressed interest in more closely following projects, but having a hard time doing so. And then finally, there was discussion of the economic development portion of the 2020 Blueprint program and what role the CAC will have in providing citizen input for that particular component of the project. There's obviously a lot of interest in that particular component. Speaking just for myself, I think this is just, a small part of a much larger conversation about the important balance of gray and green infrastructure and, of course, now economic development, and how we all need to think holistically about those aspects and how they impact community enhancement throughout Tallahassee, Leon County, and also protection of our natural resources. So those are all the items of interest from the CAC. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any questions for the Chair of the CAC? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any items pulled from information?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, they're not.
Any commissioners like to ask any questions on any of the information items?
Mr. Chairman, what are the information item numbers?
Information items 1 through 3 was the CAC meeting minutes, the 2020 infrastructural project update, and the Orange Avenue, Lake Bradford, Spring Hill Road corridor study. Items 1 through 3.
I wanted to ask a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Proctor.
Did I read on number 2 that the first item to identify Capitol Circle Southwest Orange Avenue was as the top priority of 2020? Is the top priority 2020 project? I read that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Now, is this the same project that money is being taken from? Is it from Spring Hill Road down to Woodville Highway up there on agenda item on 10? Is this the same source in which money is being redirected?
Towards that project. Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to lock in that staff had told me that this is the top project that of our 2020, and I'll have comments at a later time. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from members? Moving on consent, is there a motion to move consent?
So moved.
Consent's been moved by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda modification was to move 10 ahead of 9, item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, the presentation for this item will be given by Mr. Tedder. I believe he has a brief PowerPoint for you to consider.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kind of give you a little bit of background. So this is a proposed funding strategy to address the Northeast Gateway project, and kind of set the tone a little bit. Going back to your April 1st, 2015 IA agenda, we talked about prioritization of our 2020 projects. And Commissioner Proctor, you're right on target with your comment. Capitol Circle Southwest is the top 2020 project, and all the funds are trying to be directed to that project to complete it above and beyond any of the other projects moving forward at this point. You also directed staff to negotiate a funding plan for completion of Capitol Circle, which Charles and I have been doing for the last year and a half. And today will kind of get us one step closer to a final funding plan. The third thing that we were directed to do is incorporate all state roadway projects in the CRTPA Regional Mobility Plan. This was the one area where we indicated that you would receive the maximum bang for your buck when you're trying to leverage other people's dollars for the 2020 sales tax projects. And you'll see in a few minutes how all that's starting to come together. Also, due to the high cost of bonding, you directed us not to proceed with bonding at this point, but you also identified where there was opportunities to consider public-private partnerships. That is something that you would want us to bring back to you for consideration and evaluation. Going towards your accomplishments by just simply putting the 2020 sales tax projects that are located on state roadway systems, the thing that has already come out of that, those projects that are identified in red, so 3 out of the 6 projects are already beginning to receive funding from DOT in a significant way. That is what DOT asked for. They wanted to see a list of projects in their capacity projects in their 5-year work plan or in our regional mobility plan. You all have done that, and now we're capitalizing on that effort. Real quickly, in our 5-year work plan, might be a little hard to see this, but DOT has already put together approximately $51 million for construction of this red segment here. Orange Avenue, DOT is looking at doing a PD&E study. That's the first step of starting the funding towards you. They're completely funding the PD&E study. And not only are they looking at the segment in blue, which was the sales tax project, but they said, it really makes sense to extend it from Monroe Street all the way to Capitol Circle. Again, that is funding that is 100% from DOT. South Monroe, Woodville Highway. They are near completion of design of this segment, the roundabout, if you will, the oval about. So their next phase would be moving into right-of-way acquisition as well as construction dollars. This construction dollars are not in their 5-year work plan. but I think next year you'll start seeing dollars shifted towards the construction of that project. Again, all of that will be funded through DOT dollars. And again, that's a direct product of you putting these projects in your regional mobility plan. Looking at the opportunity for public-private partnerships, we have one, and one located on the Willani property. And if you notice, the Willani property critical area plan is really all of that's in that gold-colored area. So we have an ability to partner with a developer, the Oxbottom Mortgage Holdings, we'll call them Oxbottom. You have Leon County, who has interest in the stormwater needs of the county. You have the City of Tallahassee, who, well, keeps toggling back, that also has a plan unit development approved in that area, as well as needs for the roadway to extend that network. And then you have Powerhouse, the remaining portion of the property, what we call the arch, north of I-10, in between Centerville Road and Miccosukee Road. The proposed development for a piece of the tow that's kind of sparked the discussions for having a public-private partnership is really identified up here in the top right-hand corner. A substantial amount of dwelling units, 1,300 dwelling units, an 180 adult living facility bed unit, 115,000 square feet of office and retail, and another 240,000 square feet of government and institutional uses. What you see below the blue areas, the red text, those are some of the partnerships that we are working with the developer through a 163 to have those properties delivered free of charge to local government. So you're looking at a senior center site, elementary school site, a fire station site, and a water well site, all to serve the citizens of the community. So trying to figure out, well, how does that project fit into the bigger picture of what we're trying to do? Notice that the top 6 bullets there are all projects that are in your 2020 sales tax list of projects, and those are all the projects that are on the state highway system. When you look at Thomasville Road and I-10 interchange, that is something that was brought before the CRTPA last year, and near the end of last year you saw some pretty significant capacity issues, which we'll touch on in just a minute. But that project in itself has the ability to compete with funding with every one of those projects above that. So it's real important that we get ahead of that project and what it means for the ability for us to leverage DOT funds to satisfy the needs for those projects up above it. And Northeast Gateway, even though it's not on a state highway system, it has a tremendous impact on the state highway system. As we all know from, or those of us who were in the CRTPA meeting last year, Thomasville Road is not only failing now, but if you look in the future outline years, those red areas means it's going to fail in the future. So we're in a trend where in the next couple years, you'll consistently see it, that areas having some issues with failing. A little bit of music might help me a little bit. I might get into the groove of things here.
That's Rick's pacemaker.
All right. I would try to sing, but you would all leave.
Finish your award acceptance speech.
So the solution that came before the CRTPA was a two-way flyover. They called it Alternative 7. And essentially it took see if the mouse can, took an elevated flyover from the intersection of, I think, Centerpoint Boulevard, and it extends well past the Clay Commerce Drive to the north of this area. So that roadway itself could have a potential significant negative impact on all the market district efforts that we are considering as part of the 2020 sales tax list of projects. So kind of give you an idea of the construction, why it's significant. So this is the existing roadway. They were proposing to put another roadway on top of that. So it set it on top using a big post and beam construction. So not only is it significant in the construction, probably aesthetically wouldn't be one of the most beautiful roadways we have in our community. So Alternative 7, it comes in at a mere estimated construction price of $197 million. That is pretty significant. Now that does not even include the right-of-way costs that would be necessary to serve that roadway. So that, folks, is what we're trying to compete against if that project moves forward with funding of our state roadway system. Kind of going back to our current FDOT work plan, they have in their 5-year work plan state funding for this segment, but they also had included temporarily local funding, which that means us, our 2020 sales tax dollars, in the amount of about $36 million to fund the segment between Spring Hill Road and Crawfordville Highway. Now, during one of the CRTPA meetings, we had a discussion where that was a holding plan to allow us to work through this funding strategy that we are now working with DOT to kind of close out, and today's actions will help us move forward with that. So kind of going back to the Northeast Gateway, what DOT has indicated is that this first phase of the Northeast Gateway, which is that blue line that runs from Fleshman Road all the way up to Shamrock Street, and this mouse will not catch up. So this is Shamrock Street up here, the intersection with Centerville Road, excuse me, and that's Fleshman Road. This entire blue segment is critical to begin having relief at Thomasville Road and I-10 interchange, to the extent that it could very well delay for many years the necessary improvements to reduce traffic at that intersection. In other words, it will start drawing traffic from that part of the community through this roadway and relieve Thomasville Road I-10 interchange. That Phase 1 cost was estimated to be $47 million at the time of our sales tax deliberations. It did not include a 4-lane overpass in this area, which is also estimated to be $10 million. So we invited the District 3 Secretary. It was the City Manager, the County Administrator, the Place Director, myself. We asked the District 3 Secretary to come to Tallahassee to meet with us to talk about funding strategies and basically lay out a plan for him to consider as we're moving forward. And what we indicated was we wanted to build the least amount of roadway that it took to alleviate the congestion at Thomasville Road I-10. So essentially we came up with a plan that identifies a 4-lane segment to a certain point, and then a 2-lane segment, for lack of a better term, up to the overpass. Go ahead and build an overpass to 4 lanes because we know it's going to be needed in the future, and then build a 2-lane roadway segment north of I-10 to Shamrock Street. The Secretary seemed to be very confident with that solution, and the idea that we would just try to minimize the cost to make that connection through that corridor and relieve Thomasville Road and I-10. In our deliberations with Powerhouse, and that's with the property owner north of I-10, what they have indicated was that if we built this segment north of I-10, which would be 4 lanes up to this point and 2 lanes on Shamrock Street, then they would then provide the right-of-way necessary up to this point where there's existing right-of-way. That's very critical, again, going back to DOT, because once you tie it into the Bannerman Road, Thomasville Road intersection, which this connection does, has even more greater impact on reducing the transportation impacts on Thomasville Road and I-10. Powerhouse also indicated that, consistent with the holistic design for this project, they also are requesting that Blueprint fund the purchase of this entire greenway that was a part of the original Phase 1 project. They have estimated $1 million for the purchase of that piece of property, and they also had asked that once the property was purchased, that there would be a commencement of the trail being connected throughout that greenway immediately or shortly thereafter the purchase. Kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about for a typical roadway section. For that 4-lane roadway section up to a certain point, we really want it to look like it's a beautiful boulevard area for our community, where it's a nice green corridor throughout. It would be limited access throughout the corridor, and it would be something that would be the nice gateway element that was anticipated in the sales tax project. Where we indicated where we would build a 2-lane roadway segment, again to reduce the cost of this roadway to make that critical connection throughout the corridor, we would simply build 1/2 of the roadway. And you see this is pretty much what the segment would incur. Still 2 lanes of traffic, a sidewalk that could be expanded into a mixed-use trail on the outside, continue that green wall effect, and then allow this other part of the corridor to be built at a later date. The design of both of those probably needs to be coordinated at the same time, though. And then the segment that extends from Shamrock Street, the intersection of Shamrock Street with Centerville Road over to Willani Boulevard would look very much like this. All that's required is a 2-lane roadway segment. You would expect a sidewalk on one side immediately and a future trail on the other side. Dove Pond, where this fits into the entire scheme of things. This is the area of Dove Pond, and what we're looking at is a watershed, a significant watershed, and this is not an exact line. This is one I just kind of drew on with a PowerPoint. Kind of shows the general area of water that flows through this area, and it's significant. There's an opportunity, looking up here in the top right-hand corner, the construction cost for that stormwater management facility, and I'd say it's a regional stormwater management facility, is about $3 million. It serves to reduce the flooding south of Miccosukee Road, and that's been long-standing problems that the county has had for years. It also would address the Willani Boulevard roadway. There's stormwater that would have to be required for that roadway segment once it's constructed. Also, it would serve a portion of the Canopy PUD, which is this area here. And it does have the ability to serve a portion of the city's property in here. The developer has made a request where he would fund 1/3 of the construction and Blueprint would fund the other 2/3. So the city and the county would both have realize some benefits from participating in that agreement. The city manager and county administrator have negotiated with the developer, and essentially the developer would be responsible for all maintenance responsibilities, short-term and long-term. So there would be no maintenance responsibilities for the city or the county moving forward. And I put a note at the bottom of the screen, based on timing and the necessary, the need for stormwater management in this area, we don't expect it to occur until the 2020 sales tax proceeds are being collected. So we're identifying that as the 2020 sales tax proceeds as being the funding source for that component. So again, when we had the secretary in of DOT, we suggested, well, why don't you fund all of this roadway segment? If we're providing such a significant benefit through Willani Boulevard, we would ask that you shift dollars towards this roadway. What the secretary did come back and say, well, I have the ability now to try to shift all the needed right-of-way money for this project. So that's nearly $15 million. He's in the process of doing that now. So here we are. We started with a sales tax project that we had estimated to $70 million of local funding. Now we're down to the range of $21 million. So how all this stuff starts connecting is that we were able to leverage dollars and apply it to other projects that we have on our sales tax list. The funding strategies that we are recommending is, now that that number is probably something pretty manageable as far as going to legislative request, you direct both city and county to make it a priority to go to the legislation every year to get state dollars for that roadway segment until it's constructed. Secondly, we have identified both through our federal lobbyists for the city of Tallahassee and Leon County, they want this roadway project to be considered for the Tiger Grant applications. The NOFA, I think it's notice of funding intent, has just come out last week. I believe they are due in April of this year. They have highly encouraged us to submit this segment of the roadway for that Tiger Grant application. And what we'd estimated, they told us somewhere in the range of $15 to $20 million would be the maximum that they would consider for a Tiger Grant. So that puts us pretty close to funding the entire project. We were able to use all the DOT dollars for the right-of-way and design and the construction that we have up to this point as leverage dollars. In other words, if we had to match $10 million, we already have $10 million of right-of-way that's been given to us through DOT, so that we can use those dollars for a match for that grant. This table is too much to read from here, but you have it in your agenda item. It's the last page of your agenda item. Kind of summarizes everything that I just went over regarding what we anticipate to fund through the Tiger Grant, what we anticipate to fund through a SIB loan, versus as well as from the developers and the 2020 sales tax extension. Again, this is just a funding strategy. None of this is guaranteed. And what we do want to do is have that direction from you today to move forward with trying to put those pieces together. So the recommendations that we have before you is, number one, seek state infrastructure bank loans or loans. It may take 1 year or 2 years to go through this process for Willani Boulevard. and that would complete the section all the way from Fleshman Road to Shamrock. Number 2 is to seek state funding for Capital Circle Southwest. Make this a priority for your legislative request. Number 3, direct the city and county to submit joint Tiger grant applications for Capital Circle Southwest. Number 4, approve $2 million for the 2020 sales tax funds for Dove Pond, and it requires a joint agreement between the city of Tallahassee and Leon County with the developer. And then lastly, dedicate $1 million of 2020 sales tax funds for the Greenway purchase. And with that, Commissioners, I would open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tedder. We have no speakers. I have no public speakers on the item. I'll move on to Commissioner discussion. But is anybody ready to make a motion on this item?
Make a motion.
Second.
5, please.
Staff recommendation has been moved by Commissioner Lindley, has been seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Commissioner Pratt, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wayne, on page 116, under the Capital Circle Southwest, help me to understand where the city manager and administrator and place director met with Secretary Barfield, and they sought to a funding strategy which would free additional local funds from this project and shift them to the Willani project. What does that mean?
No, sir. It's somewhat reverse. What we were asking was if we used our local funds for our local roadway segment for Willani Boulevard, that they in turn would take their state dollars and shift them to this project. So we actually asked the state to fund all of Capital Circle, construction and right-of-way. What they came back with a counter was that they would move $15 million into the right-of-way acquisition component. So now we're down to $21 million necessary for construction. The Secretary was quite frank with us and said, there may be other projects that are under budget that once this project is designed by the end of this year, he may be able to shift those dollars to that project and be completely funded through state funding.
Okay. So is the sentence wrote, what you were telling me about this sentence, I see what I saw is that they were freeing money from Spring Hill Road, and they were shifting that money, to use the language here, to the Willani project.
No, we define the segment of Capital Circle.
I mean, you see what I'm reading?
Yes, sir. The sentence essentially says the segment of Capital Circle from Spring Hill Road to Crawfordville Highway. It's all about Capital Circle. We're not talking about any funding for Spring Hill Road. It's the segment of Capital Circle from Spring Hill Road to Crawfordville Highway.
So is money being taken from here to shift to Willani? Is that?
No, sir.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, sir. We're getting money shifted to this project from the state.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was read. I mean, it reads in a way that money was being taken away, and it was saying it was shifting them to the Willani project. So, that caused great heartburn when I read that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lindley? Yeah, more comments?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the synergy of all of this. I think we've really done a great job working with the state and the state with us, which has not always happened in our county. And so this is a big leap forward. I appreciate the Ox Bottom developers working on that pond. That regional stormwater pond is significant. My only little concern is if the Tiger grant doesn't come through, what is our backup plan? And if you have that in here and I've missed it, I just have misread.
Commissioners, currently construction for Capital Circle for the segment between Spring Hill Road and Crawfordville Highway is not anticipated to begin until 2021. That is in your 5-year work plan with local funds up to this point. DOT, they have been exceptional partners to Blueprint, and they've offered suggestions, maybe advance funding. They want to have the road constructed as soon as possible as well. So it may be very likely that DOT comes in, advance funds that project, and we can pay it back after 2020. Sales tax proceeds are collected.
And just one more comment. I really appreciate the leveraging of funds that Blueprint has done thus far, and I think that's going to be really apropos when we move into item 9, going backwards, that the leveraging of Blueprint really has just been phenomenal, probably more than most taxpayers anticipated when they voted on this back in, I think, 1998. So leveraging rocks. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Miller, followed by Mayor Gillum, followed by Commissioner Dozier and Commissioner Deloge. Commissioner Miller.
Wayne, I wanted to ask you something about this. You know, normally we have the local funding piece in there on a state road because we want to provide a different roadway experience, essentially. And how does that fit into the plan of the state taking over the construction of the highway?
Yeah, I should have followed up a summary. What's been on the table ever since Charles and I began negotiations with DOT is we understand what their typical roadway section is, and we do believe that the blueprint typical section is a little bit more elaborate than DOT standard. We have always put on the table that the above and beyond would be fully funded through through blueprint, excuse me. So we anticipate having some additional landscaping costs come through, but it should be minimal compared to the numbers that you're seeing up on the screen.
All right, and the second point that I just basically want to get on the record, and this actually applies to number 8 also. Blueprint was set up to instill confidence in the public of everything and one of the pieces of that was the Citizens Advisory Committee. And yet number 8 and number 10 did not go through the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'm concerned about setting precedents where things are brought to us at the IA without having made that stop first.
Commissioners, just very simple. This is high-level policy decision. We need your direction before we move into the next layer. So we would imagine as we go through the SIB-loan process, we may have to adjust as we move through. There may be other public-private partnerships as we get this ball rolling, but we need your initial direction with this funding strategy for us to move forward with starting the implementation of the parks.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor Gillum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to speak up to thank the city manager, the county administrator, excuse me, Ben, Wayne, and the other staff that worked on this. The fact that we have gotten the state to put an additional $15 million in right-of-way costs on Capitol Circle between Spring Hill Road and Crawfordville Road, an important component to complete on Capitol Circle, is tremendous. But I think equally tremendous, the fact that we may have a project getting accelerated that may help to relieve traffic on Thomasville Road, which every morning feels like it's getting more and more crowded. The partnership between the state, the local funding match, as well as the private sector coming to the table to make this project work is a real show of, I think, ingenuity by you all's leadership and going, meeting with the state and trying to figure out how we can better work together. We've seen the reports where FDOT has done really great work to the west of us in District 2, and we want to see that same kind of thing continue to happen in Tallahassee. And so thank you for your leadership on that, and the product is a good one.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Might I just add, because I couldn't let the moment go by without saying so, and I know Rick would say the same thing, is that the advanced work of the CRTPA for a long time really paved the way for that to work out. And I think Wayne covered it, that the district secretary has been just great to work with through this process. So I think I had to say that.
Thank you. Commissioner Dozier.
Well, that's just a perfect way to tee it up. Thank you, Vince. And I won't say much more because I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made, but we started talking about this as a board, aligning Thomasville Road and Welaunee at the CRTPA board over a year ago, and we had a lot of citizens, the Tallahassee Builders Association, builders and contractors who were very vocal. And I just love the synergy, and it seems like the relationship with FDOT and the Secretary is better than ever. I think it continues to improve, but I think, we did a lot helping to move that along as a board and really not stand in staff's way. So I agree with all the comments, thanking our staff. You all really shepherd this through, but we got to get out of your way to let you be able to accomplish some of these things, and I'm glad we were able to do that. So thank you very much. And FDOT, I really am excited about this new partnership. So this is exciting.
Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wayne, thanks. Anytime you can take $70 million worth of local tax dollars and make it almost nothing for us out of pocket, you keep bringing those agenda items back to me. I'll be here all night long. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Deloge. We'll move on to the vote. Commissioner Pratt, the final comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I had read the article much in the context in which it was written, and I had taken about a couple bottles of aspirin, and I'm glad that that it was a different meaning than where it was written, because it's rare that anybody shoots $15 million, on the speedy up to a Southside project. So being totally unused to a little speedy up, I'm just blown away here that they're about to collapse on the floor. So I want to pile on with the compliments of that great work, for which will expedite a project completing the great Southwest corridor for the Capital Circle. Thank you.
Staff recommendation has been moved by Commissioner Lindley, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are any opposed? Motion carries 11-0 with Commissioner Sauls out of chamber. We'll move on to item number 9. We have a lot of speakers and interested people in the building for item number 9. I want to go ahead and recognize Leadership Tallahassee class number 33. Raise your hands. They're here to satisfy their requirement. Hello.
They got to stay till the bitter end. Right?
You got to stay to the bitter end.
They leave. We're taking names.
The way this thing is going to go, we're going to let staff make their presentation. I would ask that the commissioners hold their comment until after presentation. Then we're going to allow for public speakers. I have 10 here. Ask for commissioners to also let those speakers speak, and we will save our comments until commissioner discussion. Item number 9, we'll start with the staff presentation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and good afternoon, Commissioners. The item before you seeks the IA's direction related to a proposed model for the implementation of the economic development component of the sales tax, as well as to serve as the community's EDO of record, given the recent developments of the EDC. Commissioners, Rick and I realize that there is considerable interest above and beyond the people who had to be here today, right, in our community of late on this issue. And again, we think it's a great testament to our community that we have this level of interest. Commissioners, the economic model that we're proposing to you today was not conceived of overnight. In fact, many of the essential elements which form the foundation of the model have been in place for many years, or have taken many years to get us to this point. In addition, many of the specific recommendations that are reflected in this model were specific recommendations of the Sales Tax Committee, who spent over 2 years working on this item, and of course was chaired by the hobbled but still quicker than me Steve Evans, who I know is in attendance. In fact, Commissioners, as Rick and I were working on this model over the past few months, we actually said out loud on numerous occasions that we were lucky to have this piece of the puzzle already in place, or that element already in place. And ours was really a matter of putting the pieces together in a sustainable model. We realized, Commissioners, that the kind of luck that we were talking about was, as someone once said, that which happens when hard work and preparation finally meets opportunity. And that's the kind of luck we felt like we had in putting this together. It's also the kind of luck, I should say, that happens when you, the city and county commissions, give us the direction to work together, the city and the county, and to look internally to optimize the resources of our respective organizations, and really to reach externally to fully leverage our community's resources in this regard. And we feel like we've done that with this model. Commissioners, we know that you've all been briefed and you've had the opportunity to review the rather extensive analysis that's before you. So Rick and I, we're going to move pretty quickly as we can on an item like this to properly tee it up for the Commission's discussion. But by way of background, Commissioners, and to put things in proper perspective, and we think that's important as we move forward beyond today with all of our community partners. And we certainly believe the model that we've put in place, or that we're proposing to you, will play a big part in doing just that. But we say in the item, in terms of background, that we are indeed fortunate as a community to have a stable local economy. supported by strong local businesses and excellent schools and progressive local governments, if we do say so ourselves, and a wealth of talent due to the presence of our institutions of higher learning. We have enjoyed steady, incremental progress in the area of economic development in our community, and we've been well served, as we say, as a community, as with the EDO, or with the EDC rather, serving as our EDO. I'm going to try to stay away from the alphabet soup as much as possible, but the Economic Development Organization for our community. This model, our former model, if you will, of the EDC serving as the EDO, benefited from very strong volunteer participation for many, many years, stable professional staff leadership, and formal relationships with the local governments. Now, I can tell you, Commissioners, that's all good. And there are probably many, many EDOs around the country who would not aspire beyond even those elements that we had in place for a long, long time. But the flip side of that, as we talk about in the item, is that model operated with relatively little non-dedicated local government revenue, right? It was in competition with everything else. And membership contributions, which served as a big part of their budget, from a relatively small business base in our community. While this model did not suffer from a lack of commitment from local businesses or local governments or their professional staff, it did have limited capacity. And that's what we talk about. It had limited capacity organizationally and structurally, we believe, to fully coordinate and leverage the full economic development assets of our community. So it was again, we sort of like to point out that it was really not a commitment issue, but a capacity issue. As we say in the item, Commissioners, our economic development landscape has changed dramatically in recent years, and it continues to change at the velocity of changes in innovation and technology and globalization. Yet our local and even to some extent state and national economic development models tend to be rather static over this period of time. For many years in our community, people and I know you all know this, have referred to our local economy in terms of its potential. More harsh assessments have noted its persistent lack of investment, slow and siloed decision-making, an absence of coordination, an absence of strategic planning. We note these things in moving forward. But there's also an exciting dichotomy which has evolved over the past few years, something which I know we've all observed and greeted, which is that local governments, businesses, entrepreneurs in our community have engaged in a level of effort around job creation and innovation and talent retention and entrepreneurship that we haven't experienced in recent years. It's been an exciting time. Recognizing the need to cultivate and continue to invest in this evolving economic development landscape of ours, the city and county commissions, collectively approved becoming only the second community in the state of Florida to include economic development as a component of our infrastructure sales tax. And of course, as you know, the voters overwhelmingly approved the extension, one of, I should note, very, very few on that particular ballot, and 12%. Obviously was set aside for the purposes of economic development, $90 million over the lifetime of the sales tax. Given the significance of the sales tax funding, commissioners, as well as all of the opportunities associated with this evolving economic development landscape in our community, it became evident that a new model was needed to support and sustain and really propel our economic development efforts into the future. With that as just a little bit of a background and an introduction, I'm going to hand it over to Rick. Rick's going to dive a little deeper into our exploration of other models and best practices in the development of our model, which we think builds on those as well as the unique strengths of our community. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, as you can tell, we spend a lot of time examining where we've been. We spend more time examining where we need to go. Ultimately, where we go from here is your responsibility. We're offering you recommendations that we think will address our particular situation in our particular community at this time. As such, we reviewed other high-performing models throughout the country and industry best practices. One thing we found is that no particular model is successful and no particular community is successful. So basically matching that model to the community is the most important decision you can make. And again, this is your decision. We have within our midst, as you found out today, I mean, Blueprint as a brand is a strong brand in the community and the state as a whole. And meeting with the secretary for the first time, the district secretary was clear what Blueprint and you as a body have a lot of credibility and positive brand in the state overall, and that they're about to change the way they fund projects in this community. So kudos to you and the way you've turned that around. Models are tailored to fit unique strengths of a community, but there are certain success factors or traits that sort of reflect and mirror those of strong organizations that also apply to economic models. Customer focus, aligning operations with a strong strategic plan, culture being the number one factor that everyone, a community culture that fosters and brings on and everybody rowing in the same way is the most important factor you can have as a community. Measuring results and making adjustments, building strong alliances and networks across all sectors, earning the trust and respect of the communities and the stakeholders, and being highly efficient with funding and resources. We're confident that the model we're proposing to you today reflects those factors while building on our community's strengths. Building on the successes in other communities and integrating best practices, what we're proposing to you is not only a new economic development model, but rather we believe the framework necessary to support a true economic development ecosystem. This ecosystem ensures accountability, transparency, citizen engagement, and professional management of economic development projects, programs, and initiatives, while leveraging ideas, innovations, and intellectual capital through the continuous coordination of the community's partners. After many discussions with you, we believe this framework reflects your expectations. Vince will now provide an overview of the ecosystem and how it works.
Thank you, Rick. Commissioners, an economic ecosystem requires what I know you've read that we've referred to as a keystone organization to support and sustain the ecosystem. And we believe that the Blueprint framework provides an ideal structure to do so. As you know, Commissioners, when it was created, the Blueprint structure was and continues to be a one-of-its-kind organizational structure created specifically to unify governing policy and funding decisions, to eliminate silos, to leverage significant financial resources outside the community, and to unleash the private sector, our private sector partners, to do their work inside the community. I would submit to you that our economic development efforts would benefit from that same functionality. And because of the significant infusion of sales tax dollars when we created Blueprint, the structure was specifically designed to provide transparency, accountability, reporting, independent financial review, and citizen input, of course, all important structural elements for our economic development component as well. And importantly, and this is the part that I perhaps can't emphasize strongly enough, it also put in place a management structure which brought all of the resources of the county and city governments to bear and provided a singular focus in the strategy and the planning and the execution of projects. Something, again, I believe will benefit us greatly in the area of economic development. Commissioners, just a few points here on this keystone organization, because I know some of the terminology we use is relatively new. For an ecosystem model like the one we're proposing to you today to thrive, it has to do three things. It has to first provide leadership in the development, operation, and distribution of assets to the ecosystem members to build and to deliver their products and services. Of course, in our ecosystem, those assets are the sales tax revenues and any other revenues we're able to attract to the model. Second, Keystone organizations establish trust relationships through collaboration and coordination with ecosystem partners. Again, in our ecosystem, the Office of Economic Vitality acts as a central hub in creating opportunities to coordinate and connect private and public sector ecosystem members, and when gaps are identified, to be the lead agency to pursue those and to create new opportunities. Lastly, Commissioners, Keystone organizations do not compete with ecosystem members. In our local ecosystem, this will be accomplished by establishing formal relationships with community partners and stakeholders, again, leveraging the talent that exists in our community. Commissioners, the graphic on the screen here provides a depiction of how the proposed economic development ecosystem actually functions. I will submit to you that while there are countless EDO models in the country, some very good ones, there are actually very, very few communities which have the structural framework to support a true economic development ecosystem. Many people refer to this. There's a lot written about it. But I would submit to you that very few communities have the structural framework in place to support a true economic development ecosystem. To understand all the interdependencies and how this ecosystem leverages, again, all of the assets of our community, we're going to take just a couple of minutes and walk you through the specific elements of the ecosystem. Rick?
Commissioners, for all the previous reasons, we presented the blueprint structure provides a framework to support the ecosystem. In the ecosystem, you, the City and County Commission, sitting as the intergovernmental agency, will ultimately be held accountable for the expenditure of the sales tax funds. And given this level of responsibility, your role, as it is with the existing blueprint, is to prioritize projects, provide policy direction, and determine funding allocations. In this ecosystem, we're recommending the creation of a one-stop shop for the coordination of economic development and for the implementation of a strategic economic development plan. The Tallahassee-Leon County Office of Economic Vitality will serve as your hub. As we described in the item, the combination of the one-stop shop and the unified governing body immediately reduces the time it takes to perform even the most basic blocking and tackling associated with economic development, which under most models, even really good ones, is very time consuming. To accomplish this, we're recommending the newly created office be housed within the IH structure under your leadership and under the Department of Place. The newly created Tallahassee-Leon County Office of Economic Vitality will merge county and city resources to create unified processes and administration, perform analysis and program evaluation, conduct centralized reporting, and coordinate collaboration efforts among economic development partners. The alignment within place brings tremendous resources to our model, not found in a typical model. Among these resources are our joint planning and GIS departments. These relationships with planning provide numerous opportunities for collaboration and support of business recruitment, retention, and expansion. This departmental alignment allows needed land use changes in support of possible business expansions and recruitments to be coordinated on a daily basis and expedited through the decision-making process. A typical standalone economic development model might offer prospects information relative to existing zoning requirements or refer them to this department or that department or a contact person somewhere within another organization to inquire about procedures related to land use changes or other matters. This model provides for a seamless integration of the planning process for economic development purposes. In addition, the proposed model brings to bear GIS and other related systems, which are rapidly becoming essential economic development tools as we move forward. Lastly, the two economic development projects specifically identified as sales tax extension priorities, the Madison Mile Convention District and improvements to the airport, both Phase 1 and 2, eliminate the benefit of this organizational adjustment. Estimated to account for approximately one-third of the anticipated economic development funded, both of these large-scale projects require master planning, site planning, and coordination of several county, city, and intergovernmental agencies, including capacity improvements leveraged by Blueprint, all functions coordinated through PLACE. Commissioners, drilling down even a level further, we have the basic structure of the department. Like the overall alignment within PLACE, within the department, we also significantly leverage the existing resources of our organizations. The proposed economic development model provides the opportunity to realign existing staff with a high level of technical and professional expertise from county and city economic development, planning, and GIS functions. These realigned sources will provide invaluable support and considerable increased capacity to the economic development function without a corresponding need to increase funding. Existing staff, which currently provides research, planning, graphics, and GIS functions, will be realigned in the proposed model to create a research and business analytics division within the Office of Economic Vitality. This division will monitor current economic trends and conditions, analyze business, economic, and demographic information, prepare the community statistical digest, as well as other publications and specialized reports. And they would also gather data and analysis for grant applications that are in the economic development model. However, for the proposed model to reach its full potential, we recognize the need to hire a top professional to lead the Office of Economic Vitality. We're planning a competitive hiring process that promotes the attraction of the most qualified candidate for this position. Vince?
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Stepping back, Commissioners, looking at the ecosystem itself, I wanted to point out a few things just in terms of its functionality, and you could get an idea for the capacity of this model. Obviously, the Office of Economic Vitality, as Rick said, right there in the middle, serves as the hub. This continuously coordinates ongoing activities which inform the IA. As you can see from the arrows leading back to the IA circle, again, to inform your decisions relative to policies and projects and funding determinations. One of those activities, which will be critical to inform your decisions, is the creation and implementation of a strategic plan for economic development. This is something that we've not previously had in our community to guide our economic development efforts and to evaluate our progress. That plan will include stakeholder analysis, the identification of clear goals, and a mechanism for monitoring, measurement, and feedback. This plan will be developed in close coordination, Commissioners, with the private sector, with our entrepreneurial and economic development stakeholders. We think that's essential for the plan. It is the plan, with the benefit of all of the input of our community partners, that will answer many of the questions that will remain after today, and that's the way it should be. It will be used by the IA, again, to set priorities, to focus energy and resources, and to align our goals with the goals of our partners. To facilitate the creation of the plan, Commissioners, you saw in your item that we've identified a consultant who we believe is uniquely qualified, uniquely positioned to assist us in the plan's development. And upon the IA's approval, we will be ready to commence that plan with a draft back to you in September. As Rick explained earlier, another benefit of the structure, which you'll see up on the screen here, is the significant additional resources it brings in our economic development efforts, one key element being in the area of data and analytics. I'll just expand on that just a little bit. As you can see in the graphic, existing staff which will be realigned, as Rick mentioned, that currently provide research, planning, graphics, GIS functions, and more within both the city and the county organizations, to create a research and business analytics division within the Office of Economic Vitality. This function provides the proposed model with the capacity to translate vast amounts of important information into clear, manageable information upon which internal and external decisions can be made. It's an important tool for economic development. There will be more resources dedicated to this function than we've ever had in the past, again, to help inform your decisions, as you can see from the arrows circling the hub there. Another benefit of the structure, Commissioners, is the existing element of citizen participation in decision-making. Obviously, that's something inherent in the blueprint structure. We also include the Economic Development Coordinating Committee, which we'll discuss in detail in just a moment, which is comprised of communities, economic development experts, again, to advise the IA on project recommendations. Another key element of this structure, Commissioners, again, is acting as the hub. The Office of Economic Vitality continuously, again, coordinates and connects private and public ecosystem members. When gaps or missing pieces are identified, again, this is the lead agency to seek out and create new partnerships, or also to augment other successful initiatives of ecosystem members with additional resources, of course, upon your approval. The proposed ecosystem model, and this is important, ensures no disruption of the existing programs being offered today. The existing economic development programs are shelf-ready programs with the federal government, the state government, and other local programs that are administered. Once up and running and fully staffed, this will result, we believe, in a much greater efficiency in the evaluation and approval process of these programs. It's important, Commissioners, because that element in terms of the no disruption of service is very important, because in just the last 2 weeks, the EDC has fielded 5 relocation or expansion prospects. Again, upon the EDC's designation as our EDO ends effectively today. Once and upon your approval today, our proposed model will be up and running by tomorrow to pursue such leads. So again, that's very, very important. Commissioners, filling out the bands here of capacity within the model, of course, is the accountability, layers of accountability inherent, again, in the blueprint structure. These include from our Citizen Advisory Committee to the IA operating as a sunshine body, to all of the specific reporting requirements for all entities receiving funds, including the maintenance of records, performance metrics, full financial and compliance audits being conducted by outside independent firms. Again, this model contemplates all this without the need to replicate it. Again, that's another important aspect of this. So, Commissioners, as we have discussed, the Office of Economic Vitality, as you see there right in the middle, serves as this keystone entity of the ecosystem model. But I want to just show you, as we light up these arrows here, the real power of the design is in the leveraging of the ideas and the intellectual capital and of our community members, of our community partners in the area of economic development. Based on the strategic plan approved by the IA, again, programs and projects will be reviewed and evaluated by the EDCC and the CAC. Upon final funding determinations made by you, formalized relationships will be established to implement specific and specialized, highly specialized activities associated with your strategic plan. You can see those activities represented by the arrows, again, moving outward to our community partners. There are currently numerous community partners that the IA may ultimately contract with for this purpose to implement the strategic plan. You see the names here of just some of those for illustration, and question marks that indicate that in a healthy ecosystem, more evolve over a period of time. And again, that's important. Commissioners, I said I would come back to this one. This slide is about the EDCC. As you all know, we have an existing executed interlocal agreement which spells out the membership of the EDCC to serve as an advisory body. Of course, our model continues that commitment to have the prominent role of the EDCC represented. Again, speaking in terms of the blueprint model, that EDCC was intended to mirror the Technical Coordinating Committee on the construction side of the House, which provides you with all of the professional and technical guidance that you now receive on your review and recommendation of capital projects. As reflected on the screen, Commissioners, to enhance business expertise on the EDCC, something we've heard a lot about lately, the item recommends additional members be added. However, I'd like to stop, just pause for a moment here on this one to say that both Rick and I, in our briefings with individual commissioners, both received the same feedback on both sides of the street, and that always gets our attention, right? And that feedback being a concern among commissioners that of the potential for a conflict of interest for members of the EDCC making recommendations that may benefit their respective organizations, or even the appearance of that, right? In our world, just wanted to stop on that to say that Rick and I obviously open and receptive to any amendments that you might have in that regard, which continue to uphold the expertise that we seek to have as an advisory body to you, but eliminate any potential for possible of conflict of interest. Finally, Commissioners, before I hand it to Rick to wrap up here, as previously discussed, the economic development model that we're proposing here is not merely a means to implement the economic development portion of the sales tax or an incremental improvement to the way the economic development function is provided in our community. The proposed model that we have here, as Rick said earlier, we believe is truly the framework necessary to take the next step in our evolving ecosystem and to have a framework that can truly hold up an ecosystem model. In summary, Commissioners, the proposed model is an ambitious one. It features, again, one accountable governing body which streamlines policy and funding decision making. It creates a one-stop shop in the Office of Economic Vitality, ensuring the uninterrupted local EDO service provision within existing expenditures and eliminates the duplication of efforts. It provides for the integration of policy, the collection and utilization of data, and the coordinated implementation of projects and initiatives which cross the planning, land use, and economic development spectrum, as so many of them do. It creates a long-term strategic economic development plan. It leverages and coordinates the considerable economic development efforts of our current and future partners. It's informed by the expertise of our business and university professionals, and it is conducted in an open, transparent, and inclusive manner. Finally, Commissioners, all of this is done with zero additional public funding until the implementation of the new extension in 2020. Rick?
Thank you, Vince. Mr. Chairman, Mayor, Commissioners, we're confident that this proposed model best positions the city, the county, and most important, our community to advance our collective economic development goals. It has the framework by which you can establish policies, and we can carry out those policies in a nimble, effective way. Contained within your materials is a detailed proposed timeline to move this process forward and a series of specific recommendations. Our recommendations for your consideration reflect and build upon the current time and uniqueness of our community. The recommendations are to designate Blueprint IA as the economic development organization of record for Tallahassee, Leon County, to direct the county administrator and the city manager to establish the Tallahassee, Leon County Office of Economic Vitality through a consolidation of the county and city economic development offices within the IA structure under the Department of Place. Authorize the hiring of 3 full-time positions to staff the Consolidated Office of Economic Vitality. Direct staff to proceed with the hiring of Vision First advisors for the purposes of developing a long-term strategic economic development. I want to emphasize that the development of the strategic plan is designed to be an inclusive, broad-based process that involves our universities, businesses, and stakeholders, as well as all aspects of the community. We anticipate that this will be deliberate and would take approximately 6 months to provide a draft to you for your consideration. Additional recommendations include directing the county administrator and the city manager to finalize amendments to the interlocal agreement, which will create the local economic development organization equally funded by the city and the county, and modify the EDCC structure as outlined in the agenda item, subject to Vince's comments earlier about any amendments you may want to make. As Vince mentioned, we anticipate that the EAA may wish to have further discussion regarding that membership, and staff is obviously open and receptive, as we always are, to any other changes you might have. Mr. Chairman, we thank you for your time and leadership, and I will hand it over to you at this time.
Thank you. Very thorough report. I have 10 speakers. Those who want to speak, please fill out a speaker card and pass it forward. We will start with Mr. Kim Williams. You have 3 minutes. Give me your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Kim.
Yes, sir.
Man, you guys did a great job of describing a very in-depth and detailed plan. And I got to tell you, when I read the agenda item, I was so encouraged by it. By the way, I'm Kim Williams from Marpan Supply, in case anybody asks. I don't know that anybody would. But I want you to know that I applaud your efforts. I really like the idea that you're going to kick this off tomorrow if you get a vote tonight. I mean, you need to send a message that you can act like that, because truly that's what economic development is. In my 2 years as EDC chair, what we did was lightning speed responded to requests for people who'd like to move here or like to grow their business here. Don't let it get away. And that's, I also like the idea of throwing a wide net in a search for somebody to be the superstar that's going to promote our community. I think it's very important who that person is, and I like the fact that they'll report to Ben, who will be the connect between the two government agencies, so that person focuses on our community and its economic development, and not trying to keep all you guys happy all the time, which I'm sure would be tough. The only thing I think that you might look at is the board, the EDCC board and its components. You got a lot of government entities, very few private entities. You have designated hitters, if you will, from all of those entities. And my experience has been they don't make the best board members if the person that you really want isn't on that committee, but rather they designate somebody. You might not get exactly what you want. And the idea of other business leaders participating is good. Trying to focus them on targeted industries may not be as effective, because you're going to want bankers and accountants and lawyers, and they may not fit in an industrial sector, whereas they would be a great addition to the brain trust that would help your selected leaders do their jobs. But congratulations to all of y'all for bringing this together. I especially like that there's no additional revenue required from the city and the county's part. I think you guys have done an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harvey Bennett. Name and address for the record when you get up, sir. Next speaker will be Sue Dick, followed by Mr. Ron Miller.
Good afternoon. My name is Harvey Bennett, 12009 Cedar Bluff Trail in Tallahassee. I live in Leon County. Thank you for this opportunity. The nonprofit community, like government itself, exists to promote the public good. Nonprofits have tremendous power to do good, and we set our own table. We're powered by donations from the private and the public sectors. We're smart. We're dedicated to sound public policy. We're good listeners with good hearts, operate under stewardship. And because we're self-funded and self-directed, we can get things done. And that's what people, our fellow citizens, our fellow taxpayers, care about. They care about problem solving. And what are we doing to get things done? Nonprofits are accustomed to answering those questions through proof of performance and return on investment metrics. And we in the nonprofit sector, we look forward to working with the new city-county joint economic development agency to advance sound public policy. And that includes the nonprofit sector perspectives that we would encourage you to include with a seat at your table. And together to foster cooperation and collaboration among government, business, and the nonprofit organizations that make this city and make this county and make this state the great place that it is to live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sue Dick, followed by Mr. Ron Miller, followed by Ms. Kathy Bell.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. Sue Dick, President of the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to be with you this afternoon. This is obviously a topic very near and dear to my heart and many of the individuals that are in this room as well. You know, ironically, last week I was in Durham in a meeting with other, it's a committee called the Major Cities Council for the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. And we meet quarterly, and I had 24 fellow CEOs from chambers that were there. And it was interesting because one of the topics obviously always has to do about economic development. And true to form, as referenced earlier, you know, you're always looking at modeling and other examples that are in the community, and many individuals have been watching not only the state of Florida, but what we're doing in our community, and they were highly intrigued. It was just very interesting because it is such a competitive game for business development, and obviously this is a topic very near and dear to us and the Chamber of Commerce. Not only do we work with many of our partners, but we represent all the businesses, and there's close to 20,000 business licenses in Tallahassee and Leon County. So I'm here this afternoon to really just make a couple brief comments with regards to what is being discussed. I know we've talked about this is a conversation, but I also like to say it's a great opportunity. This is an opportunity for where we move going forward. There are many models out there, but I will say to you that as a capital city, and as a community that has 3 high educational institutions of excellence, we're in a very unique posture and a very forward-leaning position for success. I've already referenced our businesses that are in this community. Many of them are small business owners, and how important it is that if we stay focused on the main item for opportunity, it's creating jobs. And it's creating jobs not only for our existing employees, but for our future talent and the children in our community, and really what we're going to be in the 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I know today you will be looking at an agenda item. Obviously, we have read it at the Chamber of Commerce. It is something that we would support. It is a new day. I also would like to say the opportunity for us to work together. The factors for success that were identified, I think, is a great statement. That is what we want to do. We want to make sure we work with all of our partners around the table. As we also move forward, I think you will also continue to see the opportunities to work with many of the individuals listed on that chart to continue to see how we can push forward and make sure that everything that we are facing has the opportunity to leverage, whether it's in entrepreneurship, small business development, or the opportunity to grow our existing industries. I will say in the last week alone, our office has worked with our local government partners, with one existing company that wants to expand, and 3 other companies that are looking to our community. So it is, there's a bit of urgency. If you want to be in the game, you need to make sure you're ready to move forward, and I hope that you'll move forward this afternoon on this item so that we can continue to work together and promote our community. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Ron Miller, followed by Kathy Bell, followed by Tim Moore. Name and address for record, please.
Ron Miller, Executive Director of Leon County Research and Development Authority, 1736 West Paul Direct Drive.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners. First, I want to thank everyone who worked on this proposed economic development model. Clearly, a lot of work went into that. I appreciate that the LCRDA was included as a potential partner and also recognized as a member of the EDCC. As you know, the LCRDA is a unique community collaboration of FSU, FAMU, TCC, the city, the county, and several private sector organizations. We're charged with driving innovation based on economic development to recruit, retain, and develop organizations based on the unique assets of Innovation Park. The past 36 years have seen Innovation Park develop as a home to some of the biggest, best world-class researchers and technology. Innovation Park has the potential to serve as a centerpiece, having many of the elements necessary for an economic development strategy. It's vital that the LCRDA play a significant role in fostering the future economic vitality of our region. The LCRDA board and staff have worked diligently these past few years to position the authority to fulfill the potential of Innovation Park. With proper resources, LCRDA can contribute with other partners to growing the economic ecosystem in several areas listed in the model, including business recruitment, entrepreneurial activity, business incubation, in addition to the commercialization that we were aligned with. The LCRDA's current strategic plan includes the development of business recruitment opportunities which leverage the university's research and technology from both FSU and FAMU to attract and grow innovation-driven companies. We saw a lot of this in the Boulder trip. We got to see how that works. We're positioned to do that. We're already in the process of evaluating plans for a business incubator and seed accelerator, and we'll be working on other programs which will provide entrepreneurial companies with access to high-tech space, tools, and programs to increase the likelihood of success of these companies. The proposed model has many strong elements, and as you all know, the devil's in the details. This was touched on in the plan, but in my opinion, and I think to echo what Kim Williams said, the most important detail is that regardless of the structure that is developed, a highly experienced economic development professional with a proven track record of success who can make culture shifts must be hired to help develop the strategic plan as well as to execute it. The leader must have a clear vision of what success looks like. Clearly, we've run into this as a partner with the EDC. Understanding what those success metrics look like, it's got to be very clear. And they also need to have the resources and political support to get the job done. Another key element is that the model must provide for a regional approach. Not only do some proposed partners reach beyond Leon County, but many funding opportunities from the Economic Development Administration,
If you could wrap up, please, sir.
favor regional solutions to economic development. So LCRDA stands willing and ready to plug itself into and partner with whatever structure effectively promotes the cultural shift. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Bell, followed by Tim Moore, Dale Weeks, Jessica Low Minor.
Good afternoon, Kathy Bell with Colony Bell Engineering here in Tallahassee at 1624 Village Square Boulevard. As was mentioned earlier, Leon County is only the second county in the state of Florida to include economic development as a component of our infrastructure tax. And that in and of itself is creating a pretty exciting and unique opportunity for our community. As a small business owner in Tallahassee for the past 20 plus so years, I understand that moving forward when you don't know all the answers can be a struggle at times, and heck, half the times you don't really understand all the questions, much less the answers. So I commend this agency and your staff for the extraordinary amount of work and research that's gone into this agenda item today, and appreciate the time and effort that it took to get there. I do agree with Kim Williams, one of our very successful business owners here in Tallahassee, that I think this current agenda item really sets up the stage to be very transparent and open. The accountability back to our taxpayers is obviously very critical and important in this process, and I appreciate that this opportunity is creating that. I will also say, as a current business owner in Tallahassee, I understand very clearly that we do not operate in a vacuum. Our business community here in Tallahassee is very dependent on the other communities within our city, and we all must be successful. If my neighbors aren't successful, it's going to be very difficult for me to continue my success. So I appreciate the collaborative nature of the established plan. This year, I currently am serving as chair of the Chamber of Commerce. You heard from Sue Dick just a few minutes ago, and our chamber represents about 1,400 of our current businesses here in town. And I would say that our board is very actively in support of this plan. We were very active in the support of the extension of our infrastructure sales tax, and we're active as far as raising money and being very vocal about the importance of this infrastructure task and the economic development component of that tax to the success of our broad community. And in that position, I would say that our board is behind this agenda item and would encourage its passage today, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Moore and Jim Miller, followed by Dale Weeks, Jessica Lominer, and Anthony Guido.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Timothy Moore, Vice President for Research, Florida A&M University, 1701 Lee Hall Drive. On behalf of my Board of Trustees, my President, Dr. Mangum, we're here to fully support this agenda item to make sure that it goes forward. Florida A&M University wishes to be a part of the economic diversification and vitality improvement of this community. We have done a number of things in the last few months to ensure that Tallahassee continues to grow and thrive and diversify, partnering with Doming Station, working with our colleagues at Florida State and others. We think this is the right time, the right place for a new organizational structure to come forward and take this city, this community to the next level. We're also fully committed to the development of Southside Tallahassee because we think that's an area that's in great need. We know that this committee and the Blueprint agenda is putting a lot of dollars there. We want to make sure that those dollars, combined with some of our P3 partnership programs that we're putting together on campus, around campus, are blended so that we make sure we get the greatest economic bounce for the city and for the community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn the mic back over, but I want to make sure you understand we're fully committed from the top to the bottom of our organization to the success of this agenda. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Jessica Lominer, Anthony Guido, and followed by Stuart Proctor. I'm sorry, Dale Weeks. I'm sorry. I put the card to the side. Dale Weeks.
I'm here.
President. Don't worry, you're coming next, Jessica. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Dale Weeks. I'm at 3041 Shamrock Street North, Tallahassee. I'm also president of my own company called Global Leadership and Benchmarking Associates. I just want to say a few things regarding the proposal. First, what I didn't see in the write-up, a very extensive write-up, is something I've been involved in for quite a few years, many of you probably in this room, something called Imagine Tallahassee, where we spent an extensive amount of time looking at the vision for our community. And I didn't see anywhere in the documentation, it's implied for sure, but a vision as to what was guided. When you look at the number of organizations involved, when you get 40 or 50 people in a room, to have everyone committed to that kind of a vision. When I look out in my business and see other communities across the world, that vision is readily out there to be able to measure your progress over a 3 to 5 to 8, 10-year period. So that's one area that I would explore further. Also, I have a lot of involvement in measurement and to focus on outcomes-based measurement, not necessarily the easy things, which is how much money you're devoting to it and so forth, but the outcomes-based measurement. How many jobs are you creating? Many of you know there's been quite a few articles written in the last several months with our EDC and so forth about measurement. It's a difficult area. My business that I'm in is addressing difficult areas, but to look at outcomes-based measurement. And I also, the third final thing I would say is get the private sector more actively involved. When I have seen successful organizations, some that you're mentioned in this document, some not, like Austin or like Silicon Valley, you get 65, 75% of the funding is coming from the private sector. It is not a government-driven thing. The government plays a role. Education institutions play a role. But the private sector is where the jobs are created. And so to build that funding base where you've got the private sector in the driver's seat, I think would be the longer-term successful route. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Jessica Lominer, Anthony Guido, Steve Proctor, Ted Thomas.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Lominer, and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence, We are a management support organization that was founded in 2014 to increase the capacity and leadership of the nonprofit industry through advocacy, education, and engagement. We sincerely appreciate the time and effort that's gone into this economic development proposal that you're considering today. We know that was a lot of work, and we really appreciate the work of staff and everybody who was involved. And we want to ensure that the nonprofit sector is engaged in this from the beginning. As you may know, Tallahassee, Leon County is home to nearly 1,000 nonprofit organizations, and those organizations generated $2.3 billion with a B, billion dollars in gross receipts in 2014, and they also supported over 10,500 jobs in Tallahassee, Leon County. So nonprofit businesses are a major contributor to our economy. They're a major employer in this local area, and we hope and expect to be at the table as this proposal moves forward. I'd like to point out a few leaders of the sector who are here today. We have Frank Rudd. He is the president and CEO of the Florida Society of Association Executives. Frank represents over 1,000 association members, the majority of which live and work in Tallahassee. Audra Pittman, the executive director of the Council on Culture and Arts. Dale Jones, the executive director of the Bethel Community Development Corporation of the Bethel AME Church. As you know, faith-based nonprofits are a major part of the nonprofit sector. Also Rob Renzi, chair of the United Partners for Human Services, and also the executive director of Big Ben Cares. Also in the audience are Kelly Oddie of the Pace Center for Girls, Kevin Priest of Capital City Youth Services, Michelle Hartson of Graceful Solutions, and Beth Tidio of Lee's Place. We're all here today because nonprofit businesses are essential to this region and must play a key role in efforts to develop and strengthen our local economy. We look forward to working with you all to ensure that the nonprofit sector is explicitly represented in the EDO, and that efforts to grow and develop nonprofit businesses comprise a key focus of the EDO's work. Thank you.
Anthony Guardio, Stephen Proctor, Ted Thomas.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Gaudio, and I'm with representing Sustainable Tallahassee. My address is 2335 Grassroots Way. I'm here to talk because Sustainable Tallahassee was not on any of the lists for the various organizations to partner with the EDO. And I'm here to request that Sustainable Tallahassee have a significant role in not only the design of the EDO's strategic plan, but also to have a seat as a community partner and on the EDCC to evaluate initiatives of the organization after the plan is implemented to ensure that the efforts reflect the values of smart and sustainable economic growth. As you all well know, the three pillars of sustainability are people, place, and profits. So that although environmental concerns are a component of evaluating an initiative's efficacy, we also take into account economic and societal impacts, and they are equal considerations that need to be balanced. Our long-standing involvement in green business development positions us to be an important contributor to this initiative. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Stuart Proctor, followed by Ted Thomas. I have no more speakers after Ted Thomas. Again, if you want to speak on the item, if you could, please fill out an agenda card. If there are no more after Ted Thomas, I will move to commission discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stuart Proctor, 249 Pinewood Drive. I am a county commission designee to the Planning Commission and also the Planning Commission's designee to the Citizen Advisory Committee. I don't speak to you today as representing those organizations, but to give you a background of my citizen involvement and the appreciation for the amount of time and effort that goes into putting together a report like this. Over the past 3 decades, our community leaders have had the vision, courage, leadership, and commitment to garner enough community support to pass the sales tax option that we have come to know as Blueprint 2000. At the inception of the sales tax, many of you, as was I, were probably not yet paying attention to local politics, economic development issues, and other matters of community impact. I consider myself fortunate to live in Tallahassee, where the next generation of elected leaders always seems to grasp the magnitude of the legacy the previous generation leaves in their trust. With this in mind, I do give pause when I read the next generation plan for handling the Blueprint 2020 tax dollars. This is not to say the plan is a bad one, but it is to say that we absolutely need to get this right. Our local taxpayers have entrusted you, the elected officials, to be responsible stewards of their commitment. For too long, Tallahassee and Leon County have struggled to get our economic development house in order. For 12 years, I've been a member of our local EDO, and it always seemed there was a revolving door of executive leadership, each one carrying a new strategy, idea, website, and staff specifically assembled to carry out the mission. Yes, there are success stories over those years. In fact, I had spoken to both chambers on occasion as part of endorsing the EDC for their annual funding. But clearly the level of success that a city of our capability should not be satisfied with. I am encouraged, as many of my colleagues are, by the conversation, debate, effort, and opinions that are circulating today about economic development. But quite simply, the economic pie we are currently slicing is not sustainable if we expect to grow into a capital city worthy of the third largest state in the Union. We must cook a larger pie. With a larger pie, new economic development opportunities will grow organically, and we will all prosper. We will no longer have to recycle the same business targets that exist today. As they say, a rising tide floats all vessels. I encourage you, our current local elected officials, to carefully weigh all options and strategies for execution of these sales tax dollars dedicated to economic development. With your colleagues around the state, visit your colleagues around the state. Attend an EFI board meeting. The suggestion of hiring a consultant, especially the one mentioned in the agenda item, is an outstanding idea. But what is the use of hiring the best of the business if we do not give him enough flexibility to help us develop a sustainable and fair plan for the entire community to be proud of? The plan in front of you is very well prepared, presented, and is complicated and full of new ideas for Tallahassee. Seemingly every detail is addressed. Take your time to evaluate and vet the plan. It may well be the perfect plan right out of the gate, but the odds are against that type of perfection.
Please finish your comments. Sir?
I'm not suggesting we examine this debate ad nauseum, but there are common themes spoken here today that need consideration. We must repair our economic development reputation if we want to compete in regional, state, and national economies. Contrary to the second paragraph of the report in front of you, the state of Florida current economic development model is working. Florida is leading the nation in job creation, 1 million private sector jobs in the past 5 years, and our statewide growth rate has led the nation since April of 2012. There are folks getting it done correctly in our backyard.
So your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ted Thomas, followed by Ed Hollyfield. Ed Hollyfield is our final speaker.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ted Thomas. I live at 1469 Vucray, Tallahassee, 32308. First of all, I want to compliment Rick and Vince. This was a very comprehensive report. I'm not sure I understand and have been able to digest all the C's, the EDCC, CAC, place, and all those other things, but I'm going to study it, and I'm going to be up to snuff when you call for the test. I'm here representing NEBA, formerly known as Northeast Business Association, and Barney Bishop. Barney Bishop's our president. I'm also here on behalf of my own behalf, on behalf of 1,400 realtors in our community. Basically, what your folks said is you needed to add 3 business leaders to your EDCC. I concur in that, and I'd like to recommend that both the Tallahassee Board of Realtors, which it has a big economic impact in our community, and NEBA, which represents over 200 small business associations. Both NEBA and the Tallahassee Board of Realtors folks, we're the folks in the business trenches. We do it every day. It's what we do to pay our bills, to meet the service that our customers need. We are indeed hands-on in every way, shape, and form in this community in making a living and being a part of business. We are what you would want in a local person to handle your business. I strongly support the recommendation of your staff and suggest that both NEBA and the Board of Realtors be on the EDCC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hollifield.
Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. I did an analysis, I read the analysis of this economic development charade just a few minutes ago. And it really is dishonest. It's not truthful. They talk about a wonderful community in Tallahassee with excellent schools, good businesses. Where are these businesses located? They aren't in the black community. In the black community, you got 40% poverty. Some areas even higher. 50%. You look at unemployment. You look at any of these parameters. You look at wages. Wages in Leon County are flat. Been that way for a long time. Real wages, that is. Wages corrected for inflation. And then what we need to have is a workshop on ending income inequality and economic segregation. We have to have people up in Canada to tell us about that. We got a Gini coefficient in Tallahassee of 0.51. It goes from 0 to 1. 0.51 is awful for economic inequality. That means we're worse than the state of Florida overall. And the state of Florida, in terms of economic inequality, is nothing to shout about. It's terrible. And the schools are becoming more segregated. Where are these excellent schools? McClay? Is that your standard? People tell me the schools in Leon County are becoming more segregated. Segregated by housing. All of the housing, low-income housing, public housing put on the south side of town, where poverty is concentrated. So I don't see, who ever did that analysis of economic development in Leon County? I don't know what they're basing it on. And then if you go outside the bubble of Leon County, all of the propaganda from Ron Sachs and all these kind of people, then you'll find that it has really come under a lot of criticism nationally. The New York Times did a detailed study of the effects of economic development on these communities, these giveaways to business. And what they found, the New York Times found that communities come out worse when they give away all this money to big business. So I think you need to reconsider facts versus propaganda. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. That was our final speaker. We'll move on to commissioner discussion. I can't imagine there's no commissioner that wants to speak on this item. And so I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to speak. What I will ask that before another commissioner cues in, that at least every other commissioner gets the opportunity to speak. I'm going to start with Commissioner Deloge. You got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the speakers. I think a number of you made great comments, and certainly nothing's cast in stone. Let's face it, government is kind of a flexible, fluid kind of thing. So, and thanks to the staff for a great, thorough, thought-provoking kind of item. I know there's a lot of work put into this. And thanks to the EDC. Sue, I was on the board for a number of years and served a great purpose and really met the needs of our community in a big way. Well, we're kind of growing up here a little bit, and we're stepping up a little bit in the big time. The old model, if you think through this, had the city on one side and the county on one side, and then the EDC over here. So effectively, you got two tires here and two tires here and the steering wheel down the street. And we made it work. Okay. I can tell you there were a couple instances people don't want to remember this, but one of the things we always point to is TurboCore is one of the better successes in our community. And frankly, it came right up to the edge of complete collapse because the two forms of government weren't at the same point at the same time. And so there was a lot of backstepping. And I give the city some credit. They stepped into the ninth hour and kind of doubled up. We got there. But the point is the model didn't work as well as it could have. It was also said earlier today that this is going to be our responsibility, and I can promise you what will happen with $90 million is if this isn't spent wisely, it's not going to be somebody else's responsibility or who's being held accountable for this. It's going to be the 12 elected officials who hold these seats that are going to be held accountable for where we go with this. So I think also the EDC effective today is the end of the EDC. I want to plant a flag in the ground today, and I want to say we're open for business. We want your business, and here's the model, and we're moving forward. I don't want, if you think through this, there's been a lot of discussion about some of the nuances with the recommendation, and I like to say let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. This is a great agenda item, and it's the great first step. Is it perfect? No. But nothing ever is. And there's nothing we do today that we can't mold and change and format and fashion in any way we want to. We got a chance to do this. I feel pretty strongly we take this and move forward with it. And I'd make the motion that we accept the staff's recommendations for options 1 through 5 as it's been put together. I'll also say to the earlier comment about using a car, if you look at the car under the new model, we got all 4 tires in the same place and the steering wheel in the same place. And the staff's done a nice job of building in safety airbags for us and seat belts because, frankly, I want to be safe because I know that we'll be hearing from y'all down the road if this doesn't work out. So, I mean, where the car goes is a strategic plan. I think having Gray Swope and his group potentially as the person that helps drive that is great because he has got some access to the state, and if there's anybody out there that we want to partner with, it's the state of Florida. Stuart didn't mention he's also got some connections to the state, which we hope to exploit as well, Stuart, if you're still out there. So anyway, I'd make the motion that we accept the 5 recommendations that staff has put forward, 1 through 5, and go from there.
Second.
Thank you.
Staff recommendations have been made by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Ziffer. Speaking order goes Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I also want to add to Commissioner Deloge's comments about the thank yous to the staff and all the folks that have worked so hard to bring this forward. You've certainly given it a tremendous amount of thought, and that is very, very positive as we move into the future. There are a couple things that I wanted to comment on and point out. You have a structure up there which includes place and then to the director and then to the 3 entities, planning, blueprint, and the EDO. And I have shared this already with all of you, and you know that I'm in support of this change and going forward to this today, but I just want to make sure that those 2, blueprint and the planning, don't end up underneath the EDO. My concern is that eventually all the projects, as we move forward, the Blueprint 2020 projects will become prioritized through the lens of economic development of the day. And as we all have commented here earlier, those priorities change from one day to the next. Sure, infrastructure drives economic development. There is a lot of level of service involved also in addressing community needs. That's what our community voted for. And I just want to make sure that it is on the record that everybody needs to remain, that I would hope that everyone is able to remain focused, that those are 3 separate efforts on the part of the community, and that Blueprint 2020 projects remain independent from the EDO in any way that they can work together. That's great, but it should not be to the point where a project is measured on its value by that one measure, and that is the strategic plan. Secondarily, I wanted to ask that as you mentioned, the airport and the FSU project are already included in the referendum, and until those are finished, I hope you don't move on to any more hardscape economic development projects that are not anywhere mentioned and have not been vetted through the Sales Tax Committee. They did a phenomenal job. They went over and over and over the projects that were, everybody had an opportunity through a course of almost 2 years to offer project ideas. And so I know that today that everybody's ready to, I'm sure the community's out there just thinking of all sorts of things that this money could go for as far as hardscape type stuff. And so I would like to see those done before any new ones come before any of us. I think that the comment that Imagine Tallahassee is the law, I think that's clearly a tremendous effort, and it should be considered a launch for the strategic plan discussion. So incorporating that report, which involved 1,000 citizens coming forward on small and large workshops to express their opinions about what the potential for the city is and county and community are, I think that would be a tremendous effort to rely on as a beginning point for the strategic plan. Because my biggest concern is that we will try to be like everybody else, or somebody in Michigan or somebody in California. Oh, they attracted somebody to their town. We need to figure out what is a fit to our community, how we can leverage the existing assets that we have here, the existing businesses we have here, and before we go forward. So I'm hoping that that's part of your strategic plan. And with that, I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry I misspoke. Commissioner Dozier, Commissioner Lilly, Commissioner Ziffer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I was on your list. If you want to keep going with it, you free. All right. Thank you. So I, too, want to appreciate County Administrator and City Manager for a robust proposal here. It's always easier to react to a draft like this or a proposal like this than to create it in the first place. Totally understand that. And I know how much effort and I will say passion really went into this. I mean, particularly as County Administrator, I know you're dedicated to this and to getting it right. And I very much appreciate that. Having said that, I've got 3 typed pages of questions. And I don't want to scare anybody. I'm not going to read them all right now, but I appreciate your comment earlier, letting everyone talk first, Mr. Chair. And so I'm going to say a few comments and make a substitute motion. And if it looks like we're going to move towards the 5 options as in the original motion, I would like to come back and ask a couple more specific questions. But I'll just keep it a little more general for right now. I appreciate all the speakers, everybody in the room. Most people didn't get up to speak today. And I will say, slightly concerned by the number of people that I've talked to in the last 2 months who have concerns about what has happened. They have questions, maybe long-standing questions about gaps in our economic development activities, as has been cited in the item, and all of us have seen it in recent years, from Innovation Park to DOMI to just the expansion of local businesses in general. I mean, we've got the cool factor in Tallahassee. Part of that is the redevelopment work that we do. All of this is holistic. Every decision we make is an economic development decision in some part. It is all interconnected. But economic development organizations typically fill some gaps, targeted recruiting, things like that, and we have been looking to fill those gaps for a long time. So I am excited. I think it is a good role for public investment. But I have heard a lot of concerns and questions, and I didn't hear them in the speakers today. I heard comments like, trains left the station. Everybody knows what's going on with this behind the scenes, and my comments really aren't going to make a difference, or I don't want to jeopardize a particular relationship. Those comments are, I mentioned them today, and I was encouraged not to make comments like this because it might jeopardize some of my relationships, but we represent people who are here today not speaking and those who aren't here. So that's kind of the approach that I entered into this. I also came to it, and County Administrator, I mean, I noted in the item when you talked about the dichotomy, what we've seen in recent years. As someone who has been 5-year representative for the Commission on the Innovation Park Board, LCRDA, along with several folks from the City Commission who are here today, it is remarkable the energy and the untapped potential we have right now. But I know that most of those people were not included in any part of the discussion that led to this agenda item. And to have one public meeting and accept, and I respectfully disagree, Commissioner Deloge, I do think taking these 5 options today, by the time we have our second public meeting in September, based on the staff schedule, we will have set a strategic plan, hired someone, everything. I mean, we're opening an office tomorrow. There is a tremendous amount of work that will be done and will be structured by the time we get to a second public meeting. And that does concern me because I think there are a lot of questions. So one other point I want to make is you just don't get better than Blueprint. Department of Planning, Rick, you stole Vince, or not, you didn't steal Vince. You stole Wayne Tedder. We're okay with that. We know it would be great for City of Tallahassee. And we know Ben Pingree. I'm very excited that he'll be stepping in or has stepped in as Wayne's replacement over at Place. That is great. The intergovernmental agreement that we have had for a long time, I think is great. The EDCC, and I would love to hear, other suggestions to amend that, is great. It should have a role in vetting the 12%, which is actually about $56 million to different programs, 2.8 a year. It's not a huge amount. It's more than we've had before. But economic development organizations are bigger than infrastructure and dollars. So what I would like to propose, which I believe accomplishes all of the goals that the county administrator and city manager have set out, it would reflect in all of the good information that they have included in this item, but allow us, as the people who are elected to make this decision and represent everyone who's in the room and outside the room in Leon County and Tallahassee, let the public have maybe 3-4 more public meetings as we work through this process. None of us have ever run an EDO. I respectfully disagree. I think there are organizations around the country that have changed in the last 10 years and are really great examples for us. But every community is unique, absolutely. So my substitute motion would be, and I agree that we need to move quickly, I would like to suggest in this motion that we ask the city manager and county administrator to come back to the city and county commissions with a interlocal agreement to establish a EDO, Economic Development Organization, that directly reports to the two of them, has 12-member board, has bi-monthly meetings for the remainder of 16, and has, with that bi-monthly meetings, that'll give us the other public meetings in the next 6 months. I am fine if we want to hire Mr. Swoop. That's great. Typically, we do an RFQ, but for speed, I agree. It's a fine thing to just hire someone who's very good, who we know, who has been working on the community. So, secondly, we do an intergovernmental agreement for a direct report EDO. We hire a consultant for a two-phase part. First phase comes back to us in July. That's what an EDO, how it should function. I have particular concern with contracting. In one of my briefings, the administrator said up to a dozen different organizations. There are essential functions that have to happen within an EDO, targeted recruitment, things like that. And I am concerned, for example, if LCRDA and FSU are generating information on how to target the critical MRI research that only happens here in our community and nowhere else, coordinating with a different organization doing that recruitment. I'm sorry, I digressed a little bit. But two-part, we need to figure out what is the best EDO. Again, we've got a phenomenal start with this item. We need to do that with a consultant. Second part, and at that point we can hire someone. I agree with all the comments on a national search. We get our organization set up, we can attract incredible talent once we have the basic structure. Second part, after July, that's the strategic plan that you all suggest. I think that's a good idea. This gets us to September, October, same time frame, with multiple public meetings, a direct report EDO, and a consultant working through these steps. We do it just as quick. Now, I understand the comment that was made earlier that we've got a lot of things coming in the door right now. I think our offices of economic development on both sides could handle those in the interim between the closeout of the EDC and when you all bring this back. But again, these 4 things give us more public comment, make sure we get it right from the get-go, and it doesn't take any of our options off the table at all. The last thing I want to say, and I meant to say this earlier, was that the argument of placing this under Department of Place, a little redundant there, is good. But if we're going to make the argument that the EDO should be better aligned with our land planning group. Why aren't we also making the argument that it should be better aligned with Visit Tallahassee, CRA, CRTPA, every other agency we have? If this organization was direct report to the county administrator and city manager, they would have direct alignment with all of those other department directors and agencies and everything. I think we limit ourselves by putting it under place, even though that is exceptional. And so this person would have direct contact with Ben Pingree, but everyone else as well. So I'm not hearing a second.
Is there a second to the motion? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, I know I've spoken for a little while, but instead of waiting my turn then, since I didn't get a second,
The floor is yours.
I am going to ask a couple of questions. And Commissioners, I won't go through all 3 pages, but this is remarkable to me that we're about to initiate this organization that, I mean, if you all have not heard the same concerns I've heard, I'm blown away. I've talked to people at FSU, I've talked to people around the community, and they don't understand why we are moving this fast to establish an organization. And I truly believe we're setting up more silos or doubling down on it. So first, I asked in the briefing about our meeting schedule. A county administrator suggested that they're still working on that, maybe quarterly meetings. So the argument that QTI and TBI programs, those that have to come through both commissions, have been inefficient in the past and would be more efficient in the future. Vince, please correct me if I misstate you. But when I asked you and Ben Pingree about this, you said that I asked how quarterly meetings would be more efficient. Because honestly, if we had a policy to take up those programs at City County Commission at our very next meeting, it would have been more efficient in past years, period. We never really did that on either side. So the suggestion was that we could delegate authority to the Intergovernmental Management Committee or wait for an IA meeting. Was that correct? Or you all were still thinking through it?
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we have not gotten to the point of scheduling your IA meetings. Again, we didn't want to be presumptive or presumptuous on the outcome of today. What we will do, your next meeting is scheduled in June, yes. And we have every intent to bring you back policies and procedures, again, which will, and given what we have here in this unified structure, as compared to the multiplicity of layers that we had previously, we have every expectation that we're going to make everything a lot quicker than it was previously.
Okay. Well, that is an expectation, but it's not written into the item, so it leaves some questions. Secondly, I asked a question about what happens if a program like Leon Works is suggested at the County Commission or City Commission, or and what happens? Our departments are consolidated. Do we have to wait until the IA meets to get joint approval on that? And the suggestion was made, I think, Ben, you answered this. Again, we have not worked through this, but that we could either wait for a potentially quarterly meeting or yet to be determined, or the mayor's office, city and county could directly tell the EDO what to, to take action on a particular initiative. That sounded very strange to me. I am not sure with a jointly funded department that, I appreciate functional consolidation, but we got a lot of competition too. I think we will run into times when city, county, or the mayor's office has an idea and suggests that the EDO work on it, and it's not been vetted by the whole board. So that is one question, or another question. I'm not sure how this works with moving through different ideas about recruitment and other things more quickly. We have not fleshed out any of that. The gaps that had been left at the EDC of the past, I believe, stemmed in part from not having the county administrator and city manager on the executive and not having a strategic plan, other things like that. But our quick response team wasn't that quick and responsive sometimes because we were all separated. I understand pulling them together. That is great. But it also benefits from having an executive team, an executive committee that can work quickly and be responsive. I am concerned in this item that we are leading to a place where there is extremely limited board involvement. We need oversight. We are elected to do that, and it's a balance with our exceptional professional staff, and I don't think we have that. I do not think this item has really looked at what elements need to be in-house and what elements need to be contracted for. And a few questions, Vince, that I did not ask you. You and Rick have said no new funding. And yet you want to hire 3 new staff, but we're consolidating the Economic Development Department. So when you say no new funding, and those funds had come out of general revenue to fund GIS staff and Economic Development Departments at both organizations, both city and county, are you talking about no new funding because we are using those same general revenue dollars to cover the staff, and then we have an additional $300,000 that had been in the EDC contract, or is it just the $300,000? Can you unpack the budget a little bit more?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Your assumption is correct in terms of the resources that are currently dedicated from general revenue to the respective departments that we spoke of, which will be realigned in the Office of Economic Vitality. And then specifically what we're seeking today is the authorization of 3 positions and the consultant, both out of the existing 350, and we believe that we can handle it with that.
Okay. When you suggest that we would have up to a dozen or more contracts with different organizations, do you think the staff is only covering what is existing under the economic development offices and any other traditional EDO functions will be contracted out? And if we do that, are we dipping into the $2.8 million a year from sales tax money, or will that be additional general revenue, or where have you anticipated those contracts coming from?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Commissioner. No, we haven't gotten that far down the road. We think that that will all be informed through the strategic planning process. And so in terms of how many contracts and for what, now we think it's prudent to allow the strategic plan to inform those decisions, which the IA will ultimately make.
Will the strategic plan process do more than just talking to our local stakeholders, assessing our local assets? Will it also come back and look at what is flesh out in more detail than 3 paragraphs, which I understand this was a long item anyhow, but what those functions should or might be most effective to be in-house? The reason why I'm asking that is it looks like the scope of the consultant's contract is, as was mentioned before, very similar to Imagine Tallahassee. That was a good process, but we kind of found out what we already know. We don't know what we don't know. Let's be honest. I mean, we've had a good, stable economy, but it is not diversified or grown or tapped into the potential at the research, at the universities at all, or the Mag Lab, as other communities have. So I am concerned that if we just look inside, we're going to be missing something. So how are you going to deal with that balance of also looking at what others do?
Rick and I, our intent with the language that we used, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Commissioner, was to be very broad. It wasn't the intent to limit the scope of the strategic plan, but obviously Rick and I have some experience in strategic planning, and our intent was, again, there in the language that we used at this point in time, was not to limit the scope of the strategic plan, but to use inclusive language there. We haven't developed the scope. We would be very happy to bring the scope back to the IA if that was something that the IA chose for us to do. But we're very confident that we could effectuate that to the satisfaction of the IA.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, but if we request,
Mr. Chairman, anybody else going to talk today, sir? I'm asking your discretion to let us use
Commissioner
everybody.
Proctor.
Commissioner Proctor, she has the floor. Commissioner Dozier, I don't need you.
I'm
Commissioner
just
Proctor, she has
asking
the
now.
floor. Let her finish.
I'm going to take 30 minutes.
Commissioner
Don't
Proctor,
cut
you
me
have
off.
your time when your time comes. Commissioner
Okay.
Dozier, you have the floor.
Commissioners, as I said starting out, I am sorry that I have so many questions here. I really am. But that's part of why I tried to suggest an alternative here.
Commissioner Dozier, could you continue questions?
Yes, and I am not going to ask all my questions. I think Gil can see I'm bouncing around here. Well, I don't want to frustrate people too much, and I can see where this is going. But I will also say that having the city manager and county administrator have seats on the EDCC sounds a bit strange to me. You all are overseeing the organization. I'm not sure if that means you're under sunshine or if you're just sitting there in an advisory capacity, but I do think that's one thing we should consider changing. I absolutely think that we need a job description that includes in-house functions prior to doing the national search. So the maker of the motion would accept amendments.
Repeat the amendment again, I'm sorry.
Removing the county administrator and city manager from the EDCC. They are overseeing, and ultimately people report to them. So I'm not sure if they should be, I mean, they can be on there as advisory capacity, that would be fine, but non-voting members.
I like it the way, I mean, I'm not.
Designees.
Yeah, you're not sitting.
No, the language, it's a designee from the city manager, the county administrator.
Right. Okay. So they're not physically sitting on it.
Okay, well, we still have city and county staff under sunshine.
Well,
but secondly,
go ahead.
You can drop that, that's fine. I'm just not getting anywhere here, but I think the assessment of the strategic plan, understanding what functions we're going to do in-house and what functions we're going to contract for must be done before we do a national search for a director, because we got to know what we're hiring that person for. So we need to complete the strategic plan before hiring someone to get the most talented person and to be able to tell them what they're going to do.
Are you asking me, you're trying to make an amendment like that?
Yes, okay.
I think we could spend the next 10 hours wordsmithing this down to a level where you could, I think what we've got is a great start. And if they feel like they need to make this decision ahead of time, we get us back together. I mean, there's nothing we do today that's cast in stone, that's irreplaceable or irretrievable. And my sense is if we get down the road a couple of weeks, a month into this, and they say, wow, I haven't looked at this, you know what, we'd like to back up for a minute and there's a few things we need to tweak, that's absolutely what we'll do. And this will be a process that we go through. So, yeah, I don't want to change the way my motion originally read, but
That's fine,
points,
Commissioner
yeah.
Deloge. I will just say this. I will come back. All of the questions I have come from discussions that I've had with dozens and dozens of people for the last 2 months. And the fact that more people have said, whose side are you on? I am fearful of speaking because my relationships, I think the train has left the station. And the fact that I could have so many questions today, having listened to so many people in this area for so many years, it is remarkable to me that we're not hearing more, and I think that really represents a big problem with how this process happened. And I am going to offend people by saying that. And so I am sorry that I've taken this much time, but I really don't want to apologize for it, because every question I have is related to what I have learned in the last 5 years, what has been presented to us, and there are ways that we in the public could be more involved in this discussion, which we have not had for 20 years. So I won't be supporting it. Looks like I'm the only one, but thank you for at least letting me make my case.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindley, followed by Commissioner Ziffer. Matter of fact, here's the order. I think all the rest of the commissioners are in to speak. I have Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Ziffer, Mayor Gillum, Commissioner Proctor, Commissioner Daly, Commissioner Richardson, and finally Commissioner Maddox if he wants to speak. Commissioner Lindley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Commissioner Dozier's passion and interest in this. I come from a long career in an industry that is highly competitive, nonprofit, and where urgency is the coin of the realm. And I have a publisher standing back there who knows that. Urgency is in my DNA. I have lived in this community a long time where I think I coined the phrase that we have a 20-year incubation period for almost everything we do here. The Blairstone Road extension took, I think, between 12 and 15 years of discussion. 25. You and I were young at that time. We took 30 years to build a public library. We wandered around thinking about a civic center for endless amount of time. We took, I don't remember how many charrettes and whatnot on the Gaines Street extension, I think about 15 years. I'm not ready to start all over with this. I think we have been working on this for 2 years. I was not really a huge fan of setting aside this separate pot of money for economic development, and I'm with you now. I'm ready to go. But this is not the only economic development activity that will be going on in this community. This is actually a relatively small amount of money. It's less than $5 million a year for 20 years. I think we have a big interest in, as we talked about the earlier blueprint, leveraging every dime of this. But if there is a concern that government is too involved in this, this is fundamental. The taxpayers gave us this permission to spend this tax money. We are the only ones who can tax people by consent of the government. That is what we are doing. We have to have a strong government involvement in this to ensure oversight, collaboration, transparency. We will take advantage of the resources we have. I do like the idea of our technical advisory committee having more private industry. I think that's very important, and we need to flesh that out. There are quite a few things to be fleshed out, and I appreciate that we will be working on it. It's a work in progress. What we do today is a start, and we really need to make a start. One last thing I have to say is I do hope, I think Chairman Proctor wrote an article earlier, that we want to be sure whatever we do in economic development, when we get to the strategy, which is part 2 or plan B or whatever, that it does embrace all segments of our community. We have a lot of people who are unemployed, underemployed, and utterly impoverished, and we have got to work on behalf of those people every bit. So this is not an all big business. It's not incentives. It's for big business. It's changing the commission. That Gray Swoop is the person we've recommended. I don't know the man. I know his reputation. I know he ran our state economic development efforts for some time. That he has chosen to stay here in Tallahassee to live on, and even apparently willing to help us with this, is testimony to what fundamental economic development is, which is building a community, a quality of life that we love, and people who come here unexpectedly, probably thinking, like I did, they'll stay a couple of years and move on to the next big thing. He's staying here because the quality of life is good. People like living here. They see potential. They see, as Commissioner Dozier said, the cool factor in play. So we want all of this blueprint sales tax extension, the 88% as well as the 12%, to enhance quality of life. So I say it's time to go. The deadline is now. The deadline is actually 20 minutes ago. The meeting was supposed to end at 5. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Ziffer, followed by Mayor Gillum and Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Ziffer.
Commissioner Lindley, not meaning to disagree, but I'm sure Skip Foster back there would prefer you not to refer to his business as not-for-profit.
I said it's a not
I'm just thinking.
Not-for-profit.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
I'm being edited.
probably.
That was good. That was good.
There are other counties around the state, like Broward County or other counties in South Florida or Central Florida, that have a multitude of municipalities within a county. And you want to talk about having to resolve issues? That's difficult. And we're sitting here, and the 12 of us represent the city, only city, and the county government. And quite frankly, we are living off great successes from our predecessors. We are. Things that were done years ago, the establishment of the original blueprint, the decisions that were made and how they were made, we are the beneficiary of those great successes. So what we do today is extremely important. But I will tell you, I have the greatest confidence in these two individuals that they can put this together, and what they presented to us up to this point, for me, is worthy of voting for. But I also recognize, as Commissioner Deloge suggested, this is not the final. There will be changes. There will be corrections. We will identify, just as those that come after us will have to make decisions and tweak what we do. And I'm okay with that. So I'm going to vote for this. Let's go. Let's get this done. And let's do some great things for the folks of Leon County.
Mayor Gillum.
So which is it, Skip? Is the Democrat making money? No. You want to go on the record on that? All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and also to my colleagues as well, and to, as Commissioner Ziffer just did, paid homage to those who came before us making these kinds of decisions. I think that expands to the public and the private sector, those folks who allowed us to get to this position. A couple of quick points. One on the membership of what this ultimately becomes. I know we have left in the last bullet item of the membership makeup the ability for the consultant to make recommendation on sector-wise who may be missing otherwise. One, at least for me, a glaring piece that I thought probably should be included in. It seems like you have a strand for it, but there were not many. There weren't any organizations, or at least the JMI was not mentioned. And I mention them because they've got, I mean, as we all know, $100 million brought to bear in this conversation around economic development. I think they're going to be a huge player, and I think one of the things we're after are those who not only have experience and expertise, but also have some skin, you know, in the game, financial and otherwise, that may help us create a more compelling picture. And then the other would be Domi Station. You know, every time I talk about economic development, we throw entrepreneurship in here. They are, I think, a great model of what is happening, and in many ways have kind of outpaced even this conversation when it comes to what does Tallahassee's future economy look like. And I think they've done a great job in helping, you know, students graduating from FAM and FSU and from TCC, you know, think twice about whether or not they have to be on the first thing flying out of here, or whether they can make the choice to choose Tallahassee. And so there's a huge part of, I think, a growing part of our future ecosystem, and I'd like to see, you know, that represented in a permanent fashion in this portfolio. On the human services, I can be compelled by that picture. I think there were some compelling arguments to be made here. With regard to Grace Swoop, who I don't know personally, but have also heard reputationally good things about him, I would just hope, I mean, we're familiar with the governor's effort toward bringing jobs to the state of Florida. I just think we would want a more nuanced approach to our definition of jobs and the types of jobs that we're looking for and what types of industries we're trying to grow. Good paying jobs with long-term futures that connect to the ecosystem that we're trying to build, that builds off of this community's strengths. And so to the extent that we can make sure that that's embedded in the approach that's taken, I don't take for granted that Mrs. Swoop already knows that, but this is a particular type of sector and job sector that we're trying to grow, and I don't think that means just that means just any. I would also recommend that as you all consider this, and as the consultant considers this, that we not have an ever-growing board. That we probably will want, and I don't want to arbitrarily fix the number. I'll just throw out 19 to 23, but not a 50 and 60 person board. We're attempting to go deep in this effort, and that's why you're calling them your technical assistants and your technical panel, because you know, we're not trying to have all options on the table here. It's supposed to be a very discrete and specific set of options that help us to grow this economy, our local economy, sufficiently. And so, yes, we want to have a bigger number than 10. But I definitely don't think we want to get back to, we don't want to get to a 50, 60 person member board. And then the last point for me is, so we're talking about we're talking about the blueprint money which will begin, flowing in 2020, 2019. I'm concerned about what happens between 2016 and 2020. And if we are taking the step to stand up this economic development EDO arm, I actually think that we ought to make it, and we don't have to agree on it today because I think it's a commission by commission decision. But I would love to see us make a commitment of putting $1 million a year in from each of our governments that allow you all to explore on some of these things. So say if you get the next industry lined up because they want to co-locate next to the engineering school and magnetic laboratory, and we've thrown them out here already, but Danfoss, to build out the kind of high-tech blue collar and even white collar manufacturing in this area. I don't want to say, well, just wait and we'll get back to you when the money starts to flow and we have the ability to sort of deal with you. And the absence of putting some money aside in a particular pot, in this case, I would suggest $1 million. The absence of doing that takes us back to where we are right now and beyond, which is a deal comes through and then we've got to shuffle and figure out how it is that we're going to fund it. If we're going to fund it, what incentives exist, which don't, what can the state do, the feds do, that kind of thing. So I would love to set this EDO up for success from Jump Street. And so to the extent that maybe there's conversation amongst either us as the elected officials or we put it on you all's plate to help us think through before the 2017 budget process wraps up, I do think it would help strengthen the case that we're trying to make if we actually launch this thing and also put some real financial heft, relative real financial heft behind getting it started.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Proctor, followed by Commissioner Daley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I'm passing down a letter that I floated earlier. I wanted my comments to be guided by comments that I penned yesterday after reading the mayor's piece and reading this the article. I was really impressed. Vince, I wanted to give you okay. I really was impressed with Austin, Texas overview, and in this item we were given several models. But Austin was different from anyone else's presentation, and they simply said that to an overview of the Economic Development Department, here are a few numbers describing Austin's economic situation. Over 19% of all residents in Austin live in poverty. The rate of child poverty is disproportionately high, reaching 27.2% in 2012. Just over 60% of local public school system children rely on subsidized lunches or other public assistance. 53.6% of its undergraduates under 25 were unemployed or underemployed in 2012. A pool of approximately 10,000 individuals in Austin hard to employ for different reasons. I thought that was a great starting point to present for a community what their economic realities are. When you look at the other presentations, other models, it snows you, dazzles you with brilliance or snows you with BS. A lot of success numbers, but these people talk to the hardcore opposite realities of the smallest, most struggling person. And I think in the sense that when we look at a model for our community, Mayor Gillum, I agree with you about the excitement for new opportunity. And if we were to make an opening statement like Austin did about its economic reality, we would probably begin with the recognition that Tallahassee has been cited as our nation's most economically segregated. That would be our opening statement. It would be the truth that has been evaluated by Harvard University. And Vince, I saw you citing Harvard University as a basis for elements that we should look to. And if we should trust Harvard University as elements to support this, certainly we have to also trust Harvard University's insight as to the level of segregation in our community, economic. That being said, it's very, very hard, commissioners, and I'm not sure that commissioners that that you hear or you feel or you think, I don't know how you hear or feel, but for a black professional, thinking about Tallahassee or moving to Tallahassee, or how difficult it is for your children to remain in Tallahassee, when the New York Times declares Tallahassee as America's most economically segregated community, that does not inspire a lot of interest in people coming to Tallahassee if you're black. And this label, if in a yesteryear context, would be like saying that this is the home, the capital, the headquarters of the KKK. And tomorrow is Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday's tomorrow. And can you believe that the Grand Wizard has risen from the ashes to endorse somebody for president? These realities, this tone requires us to take this opportunity for this model to seek to close that reality. And in this discussion that we've been presented, I failed to grasp that we have accepted that as a burden as elected officials. I think that we have that burden to try and remove that stigma. That kind of characterization by Harvard University is a number one challenge from the perspective and the skin that I'm in. Commissioners, I've asked 8 questions. I hope that you can follow, and I hope that we can utilize this model and this opportunity to foster an inclusive economic environment. Both, I'm excited about the leadership that, and I know the quality of what our city manager and county administrator can do. There's a long trail of victories of what they can do. There's genuine respect for what they can do. But unless we posture and place before them the idea of closing economic gaps in this community, and that black people can feel like Tallahassee is a welcoming environment. But right now, that's not what the data is saying. And when I look at the numbers from at least the county, I'm sure the city is doing an outstanding job. But the dismal, the transparency of our numbers say that we're not doing business with black business as a government. We're not doing enough business commensurate to the dollars put in by taxes, be it sales tax, by taxes, be it property tax, or the contributions of African Americans across this community. We just can't get any business with our county government. I'm not sure about city government. And for this option to present itself, my question is, more or less, will this model, will it advance diversity goals and inclusion standards? Will existing economic segregation become perpetually more deeply rooted with a new economic development organization? These are things that I need to know. And I don't know if it will come out in the strategic plan, which I'm not happy about. I'm not happy that we are being asked to hire someone in a transparent situation. I don't know who else was looked at. I don't know if they applied. Was it RFP? Or was this the good old boys or what? I'm not inspired by Mr. Swoop's background, Secretary of Commerce, Florida, Enterprise Florida. Those people have never helped African American businesses. There's not a great record with Hispanic businesses. Mayor Gillum, when you were student government president and stood tall against a First Florida, and when you indicated to our then Governor Jeb Bush, our Department of Commerce was submerged into something called Enterprise Florida. I sat in a meeting in that room across the hall with the state's Black Caucus members about 4 months, and the person over General Services didn't even have a record of how much business the state does with African American business. They couldn't answer, said there was too difficult to track, all of that. So when I hear the word measurement, how will we measure that? The caucus couldn't get a handle on it from the people over contracting with the state. I'm not impressed that we have someone from Mississippi in their field in Mississippi. I don't know of any economic real successes that the state of Mississippi has done under the leadership of Mr. Swopes. I don't even know Mr. Swopes have accomplished anything that merits our hiring him. But most of all, I feel like I've been in the dark, Vince and Rick, that if we are the agents of oversight, this has certainly been a process that's been conducted in the dark. And I think that it deserves to have light. To the extent that Commissioner Dozier would suggest that our oversight should be really truly transparent, I think that we should open that process for the person who would conduct our strategic plan. One gentleman came up early and said that his company was very good. That's what he does. He's, I think, from Tallahassee. I have no problem in waiting, in that part, waiting. But just to hire Mr. Swope's company, there is nothing that impresses me with respect to the context of which I believe our community has a chance to not be America's most economically segregated city. I've seen nothing to refute that. I've seen nobody has even commented about it. We can change that. I believe that we should have some goals. There ought to be race-conscious efforts because of the context of what we're working from economically. I've suggested that black businesses should receive 40% of the Blueprint EDO. And I have questions after each of these statements. There are no stated goals nor objectives for black participation, and I believe that we have to have that. I believe that the model does not project an intent to cultivate or to bring forth young entrepreneurs between the ages of 20, 35. I think that's still young, 35. What is our plan? I think that we should try hard to get students, School of Business, FSU, School of Business, FAMU, the young people, and I think we should have policies that focuses on young entrepreneurs. The Blueprint sales tax should be dedicated 80% to local businesses, and I just think that we need policies that would support not just going out and attracting businesses from everywhere else, but making a concentrated use of this money and creating a firewall. And Commissioner Miller, your question about this money and a firewall existing between other Blueprint dollars and the 12% dollars, how will that functionally be separated or segregated is a good word, I think is a plausible one, and I think that clarity is needed there. And then the final observation here is that I believe that very, very small businesses need support launching their entrepreneurial efforts. And I would love to see a goal that we do so with 12 businesses launched, at least 12 a year. Suggests to me that maybe one a month, if possible, that we're able to lift up and bring startups from the ground up would be a goal that I would love to see this EDO. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield the floor, and if you're going to do a round two, then I'll get in line again.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly do appreciate it. First of all, I don't know if she's still here. I do want to recognize the director of the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, Sissy Proctor, has been with us for the past couple of hours, which I think is so amazing that we're so lucky to have the director of the Florida Department that is willing to put in 2 hours to watch this debate and participate. She grew up in this community, she's involved with this community, and she cares about this community. And that's great to see her here because it shows the relationship that we have as well between the local government and the state government moving forward. Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Long, great job. I am wholeheartedly in support of it. We'll support the motion on the table. I think the one thing also that needs to be said that I am very impressed with is the working relationship between the city manager and the county administrator. I think is at its best that it has been in decades. I am very excited to see how you two work so well together. I know you don't agree on every issue. I know you have a lot of issues that are very tough to work through. But you work very well together, and I think our community is served well when we have strong leadership at the top of organizations on a day-to-day basis, and I truly do appreciate that. When you look at the plan that is before us today, I think it is a bold new step in the right direction, but at the same time, it truly reflects the foundation of the sentiments of the voters in Leon County as reflected in the referendum that was passed unanimously. I think it's a combination of the two. Do you have all the answers right now? No. Do we have all the questions right now? No. But I think to move forward from here, and Commissioner Deloge said it best, this is a starting point. This is the beginning. This is a fluid process, and I respect that. I really do. Ms. Proctor did just walk into the room. Thank you for joining us. We certainly do appreciate it for being here. I am familiar with Mr. Swoop. I do know him, and I think he will be a valuable asset to this community, and I am glad that the recommendation to contract with his company is on the table for consideration, and I think that is a great first start. I would also say that, like y'all, I have questions and comments as well. I trust the process. I'm ready to move forward in the process. 2 points that I would hope you would keep on the forefront as well. I think every speaker that spoke today made great comments that could be positively put into the process for consideration, whether it's membership or other organizations and their involvement in the process. I definitely think that moving forward, Commissioner Deloge, we should take these kind of comments into consideration and see how it all plays out. So when we talk about the membership of the EDCC, I know it'll probably evolve. I agree with the mayor as well that we don't need a huge committee, but I'm sure that there will be other recommendations that come out through the strategic process. The only other thing that I would put on the table for consideration, and I support the motion as is, to move forward with the process is transparency. We need to be very clear that all the players that formally have a role and a seat at the table when we move forward with other contracts and the execution of our ideals and the priorities of this community, that it is full transparency moving forward so that there is no questions whatsoever about the integrity of the process or of the organization moving forward. Mr. Pingree, I look forward to working with you day in and day out. Mr. Mayor, some of the best work that has come between the city and the county is through the intergovernmental agency and through our planning department and through PLACE, and I think this is a great next step in our community and in the chapter. Congratulations. I support the motion on the table.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Richardson, followed by Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just several issues that I wanted to raise, and I'll go through the easy ones, I guess, first. One, when Rick presented this to me the other day, what struck me initially was the level of bureaucracy involved in this. And what I want to make sure is that the position, the director of this Office of Economic Vitality, has enough nimbleness to be able to move, and Ben and I have talked about this as well, without being so constrained. I mean, that person reports to the director of PLACE, who reports to an assistant city manager, who reports to the manager and county administrator, who then reports to the IA. That's a tremendous amount of bureaucracy, and I just want to make sure that that office has the nimbleness to be able to do what it needs to do to accomplish its goals. So we could keep that in consideration as we go forward. I would recommend that we do add a nonprofit. I agree with the mayor. I mean, I don't think we should have a board that is unwieldy, but certainly we want one that is as representative of the community as possible. And I think in a lot of instances, the nonprofit community has been left out. We heard what the nonprofit community contributes to this community fiscally, billions with a B. And so I think that is certainly worthy of a seat at the table. I think the public school district should be included. There's been legislation passed that requires school districts to offer certification programs that make our high school graduates prepared to go directly into the workforce, but they don't have a seat at the table. And oftentimes we leave them out when we talk about issues like this. They play a tremendous role in economic development in this community as well, so I would suggest that. You know, NEBA, to the degree that they are a more inclusive, and when I say inclusive, not just the Northeast, because I think what we're looking for are organizations that represent the entire community. If, in fact, their scope of involvement is broader than just the Northeast, if they are a business organization, they are a business organization and certainly should be involved in the process. I think, too, that when we talk about attracting jobs to the community or growing jobs in the community, it should be a range of jobs, from the blue-collar jobs to the STEM-related jobs. And I think so much of the emphasis has been on the Danfoss Turbocore, where they hire the engineers. Well, 60% of our high school graduates are not going to be engineers because they're not even going to college. So we've got to look for those jobs either to grow them internally or attract them to our community that will provide high-wage, high-skilled jobs for those who are blue-collar workers or above, but not necessarily at the STEM level where they have to have a college degree or advanced levels of college education. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I do agree with Commissioner Proctor to the degree that we have heard the figures and how this community has been characterized with respect to its economic segregation. And so I would hope that however we move forward, that the strategy is for our entire community to be included in this. I've lived in Tallahassee for 40 years, and I know that we're getting there, but it has not always been the case. And as long as I'm on the commission, I will continue to make that an issue. And I felt certainly much more synergy in the year or so that I've been on this commission, and even observing before I came to the commission, that there is more of an emphasis to direct attention to the south side of Tallahassee and to the poorer communities of our neighborhoods of our community than I witnessed in a long time for the 40 years that I've lived here in Tallahassee. So I'm ready to move forward. I'm cautiously optimistic, but like I said, as long as I'm here on the commission, I will make sure that we stay true to including every segment of our community in whatever we do, and to make sure that however this plan is fashioned, that it includes economic development in every segment of the community. And then lastly, the question I would ask is, how are our MWBE policies going to be incorporated into this as we move forward? I know that the county is studying the issue. I don't know what you will eventually resolve in that effect, but I know we have a very strong policy and are moving forward with our disparity study. And so, you know, I don't know how that is going to eventually work itself out, but I want to make sure that we have a clear commitment ongoing to including minority and women-owned businesses as we move forward. One of the things that I have been dismayed by the previous model that we had is that emphasis was not there. Ben and I had that conversation, and Ben was in the process of addressing that, but I certainly want to make sure we continue to put that in the forefront, because if you look at it, minority-owned businesses are more likely to hire minorities, not just African American. I mean, if you look at the Indian-owned businesses, they are primarily staffed by Indians and Asians. And so we've got to make sure that that we have that kind of participation as we move forward. I'm excited. I think this is a good first step, but certainly as we go forward, we need to leave ourselves some room. And I think, Commissioner Dozier, you have raised some very valid points that at some point do need to be addressed. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They say there's nothing new under the sun, and after a while, you kind of hear the same arguments on different issues over time. When after we passed the sales tax and blueprint, the original one, the original blueprint, the concern was that the commissions could undo decisions that were made by the voters. And I didn't want future commissioners, I never dreamed it would be me, but future commissioners having to go back for reauthorization of a sales tax without a track record that matched what they said they were going to do in the first place. Blairstone Road was used as an example by Commissioner Lindley. It bounced back and forth for over 20 years, 25 years, because you would have a 3-2 vote one way, then a 3-2 vote the other way. We didn't want to see that happen with the blueprint dollars, so we set up a separate organization, the one that we're sitting around today, that required supermajorities for changes, that streamlined processes, that made things be able to be done quicker and more efficiently. That's what this body is today, and we heard the same arguments all the way back then that it would upset the apple cart by setting this up. I think we'll be just fine. Mr. Chairman, I call a question.
Question's been called. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
question called has been second. There's no discussion on the call to the question. Commissioner Proctor, there's no discussion on call to question. All those in favor of the call to question indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll now vote on the motion. The motion on the floor is for staff recommendation, made by Commissioner Lowe, seconded by Commissioner Ziffer. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries 10-1 with Commissioner Dozier in dissent and Commissioner Sauls out of chambers. Commissioner Proctor, if you'd like to speak now, you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe, and I thought that you were going to do a second round.
Called a question, and he was recognized.
Okay, but he does things like that. I saw his last name, you know what I'm talking about. Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to say here also, and I didn't touch it because I thought we were going to do a round two, but I just want to note that this organization has to have black employees at the top. And it would be very disappointing to me that this would be no African-American representation, roles fulfilled at the highest levels. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Miller, then we're going to move on to the next item.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I wanted to make these comments mainly because I thought they were important to add to the record, but also after Commissioner Daley brought up some accountability issues, I wanted to pass along to you some comments that came to me from Lamar Taylor, who is the person who was on not only the Citizens Advisory Committee as the financial representative of the appointed by the EECC, but also on the Sales Tax Committee. Brought his expertise to the table, and this weekend I called him and said, I need feedback because I want to know what you think. Well, he was happy to see that on page 79 you've incorporated the bullets that get to the heart of what his suggestions were. Still, his point was the critical element here is that the assumption, going forward with the assumption that there are going to be these review processes in place, is going to make the folks making the decisions more accountable from the beginning. And I thought that was very important. There was one related to number 3 that I really wanted to, it related to metrics, and I really wanted to actually read that. It's not very long. All projects funded from sales tax dollars should be monitored going forward. To the extent possible, all funding should be conditioned on providing ongoing, periodic, detailed reporting on the relevant success metrics of the project. For example, jobs produced, value added to the property tax rolls, etc. To the extent funding is provided that is not conditioned on such ongoing periodic reporting, an explanation should be documented. I think it's going to be very, very important because we're going to be answering to the public on the success of this particular element of the sales tax. As many of you have referenced, this is only the second initiative of this type in the state, and I absolutely am convinced that it's important to get it right and make sure that we continue the validity of the Blueprint brand, which is entirely based on sticking to the script, essentially what was presented to the voters, and they clearly see what they get at every stage from the money that's being invested. So I wanted to stress that, especially since it came up from another commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairman, quick question to excuse me, the manager and the chairman. I anticipate that the feedback that's come forward today, that we'll find this coming back to us in some form or fashion, either prior to, I guess, a September time frame.
Sir.
Okay, appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, that's why I wrote my comments down, that they might be memorialized as that they could follow clearly.
The record will reflect such. Item number 11, Mr. Hargraves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is to request additional funds for the Capitol Circle Northwest project that's under construction.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion's been made for approval by Commissioner Maddox, been seconded by Commissioner Daly. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 11-0. Commissioner Saul's out of chambers. Item number 12.
Mr. Chairman, this is an item that we brought to you back in September with fine-tuning our conceptual plan for the segment 3D section of Capitol Cascades Trail. This is the project that's in joint with the City FAMU Way project. There's
staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation has been moved by Commissioner Maddox, been seconded by Commissioner Zifford. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Yes.
I know you want to get out of here, but the infrastructure is critical as well.
Commissioner Dozier, you have the floor.
Thank you. I know that the city is working through the final design for FAMU Way, and my understanding from the item is that that is still undergoing, and I know it reflects a we are approving this, is this right, Charles, before the city does their final approval of FAMU Way, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. The item for the realignment of FAMU Way is something that would have to go to the City Commission for discussion and approval. And assuming that they go forward with that alignment, then our work here is moving into design and construction.
So
if
they're
they
close
didn't, we would
enough.
have to circle back and
Okay.
tweak our plan. But the bulk of what we're trying to accomplish is in the plan.
Okay, so you think they're close enough that we're not going to have to come back in June and amend ours again? I mean, the likelihood is that they will be in alignment? Is that the feeling? Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 11-0. Commissioner Saul's out of chambers. We are now at citizens to be heard. I have a speaker card for Dr. Ed Hollifield. Please give us your name and address for the record, please, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. Transparency, there is none. It's the same criticisms that I've had for these CRA meetings and a lot of these other meetings, and that is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 9:30 in the morning. Working class people can't be here anyhow. So, for them, it's just tough luck. And I'm really not saying anything different than Scott Maddox said a while ago in regard to that regressive sales tax. Scott Maddox, his language, not mine, said that the poor people were getting screwed. You remember that, Scott? The League of Women Voters? You can't let your memory fail now, but that's exactly what you said, that the poor people, quote unquote, are getting, quote unquote, screwed. 25% hunger rate in Leon County. Think about it. You're talking about this stable community. What community are you talking about? 47,000 people with no health insurance. 19% of the population. The county gave workshop on infant mortality, black infant mortality, a couple of weeks ago, and nobody knew about it. And you couldn't say anything for the most part. Basically, the only people invited to participate were those from FSU. No grassroots organizations, nobody from FAMU. And you talk about transparency. What kind of transparency is this? And in regard to this EDC, y'all need to read that New York Times article. I go way back. I went to segregated FAMU High, K1 through K12. And let me tell you, Tallahassee is still segregated. Very segregated. With white people basically on the top and black people on the bottom. I remember when y'all got Mike Longhauser to recruit stuff, for Tallahassee. They ended up with General Dynamics and Tateran. General Dynamics, an American company, Tateran, and an Israeli company. Both of them producing stuff that produced military hardware for the apartheid regime in South Africa. And then after Mike Longhauser recruited them, the city of Tallahassee turned around and Tateran turned around and hired him to work for them instead of the city. That's the kind of transparency we have. And the black community remains in a state of crisis. Look at HIV. HIV is rampant. Y'all just told Big Ben Cares, I don't know why. Big Ben Cares said, you don't have no health insurance, we don't want you.
Dr. Hollifield, you can wrap up your comments, sir?
Excuse me?
You can wrap up your comments?
Yeah, okay. All I'm saying is that there is no transparency. That y'all need to read that article about the New York Times, or referencing the New York Times, because a lot of communities participate in the economic development. And the bottom line of that article, you ought to put it on the website, that says that this is a battle in which the communities are losing out and the corporations gain everything from these EDC type giveaways to corporate America. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Items from members. Are there any items from members?
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I was asked at the League of Women's Voters Forum what the sales tax would do to help poverty and infant mortality, and I said nothing, because the sales tax is there for infrastructure and not those issues.
Well, you also said the poor people were getting screwed.
Mr.
That's on the record.
Sir.
That's on the
Holyfield,
record,
sir.
You can't
if it's
deny
on record,
it
it's
now.
on record. Thank you, sir. Anything else from members? Motion to adjourn.
Where's the city inviting us to have dinner?
Oh, bless it.
Yeah.
Yes. Motion to adjourn, please.
You don't need it.
We are adjourned.
See you, gentlemen. Good meeting. Way to go.